Chapter 1. Summer, 1991. The afterglow of the setting sun gradually disappeared as the red clouds dispersed. On a small hill near the village of Ottery St. Catchpole, a huge black cylindrical house with a peculiar shape stands at an angle. Although it is conspicuous on the hill, not everyone can see it. As the residents of the Lovegood family, this strange house is cast with muggle-repelling charms and other hiding spells to keep non-magical creatures and muggles away. On the wooden bed in the room on the second floor of the strange black cylindrical house, a boy with a handsome face, long silver-white hair and blue eyes slowly opened his eyes. The boy frowned at the unfamiliar scene. Then, a huge amount of memory fragments flooded into my mind. The blinding high beams, the sound of tires rubbing against the road, and the screams of terror. Yas remembered that he must have been in a car accident. Everything before his eyes was so real that it didn't seem like a dream. But this is obviously not a hospital. I am not dead? Where is that? The setting sun was a bit dazzling, and Yas subconsciously raised his hand to block the sun. Then he saw a small, tender hand. This is the body of a little boy about 10 years old. He turned into a little boy. Yas was stunned, and a thought suddenly popped into his mind. Could it be traveling through time? Before he could process the complex emotions in his heart, a middle-aged male voice, which was obviously suppressed and a little helpless, suddenly sounded outside the door, and the voice vaguely reached Yas's ears. Luna, you are so reckless. How could you bring a muggle child home? If the people in the Ministry of Magic knew about this, they would definitely cause trouble for us. I thought you should at least know about the existence of the Statute of Confidentiality. Father, how do you know he's a muggle? This was a little girl's voice that was a little ethereal and pleasant to the ear. Maybe he's the same as us. Impossible, the middle-aged male voice sounded again. The only magical family around here like our Lovegood family is the Weasley family, but it's obvious that the child doesn't have the Weasley family's iconic red hair. He must be a kid from the nearby Muggle village who got lost after playing crazy outside. Perhaps, you should send him to the Muggle police station. Well, that's what the Muggles call their official law enforcement agency, right? No, Father, did you see that boy's beautiful silver hair? How special, I'm sure he is not ordinary. The little girl's voice was persistent and firm. I can't do anything about you. The deep male voice sighed and then fell silent. After a moment, the voice sounded again. Well, you can keep him until he wakes up. Really, the little girl's tone was filled with joy and was inexplicably cute. Well, but after waking up, he must leave. The deep middle-aged male voice carried an unquestionable tone. This isn't fair, the little girl said annoyed. But the deep male voice did not speak again. Then, heavy footsteps went downstairs. Then, there was the sound of a door opening, followed by the dull thump of feet on the wooden floor. Yas subconsciously closed his eyes again. A light footstep stopped beside the boy's bed. The little girl didn't seem to be wearing shoes and her voice was very soft. Father is so stingy, why can't he just keep you here? The little girl's somewhat distressed voice came into the boy's ears, and then a slightly cold and clumsy little hand touched the boy's forehead. Strange, he doesn't seem to be sick. Why hasn't he woken up yet? Yas's beautiful eyelashes trembled slightly, but he still did not open his eyes. At this moment, his heart could not calm down. He heard the conversation between the deep male voice and the little girl very clearly. Although the language they spoke was different from the language he was familiar with before, he somehow understood it all. Muggle? Magic Club? Luna, Lovegood? The Weasley family? Yas was very familiar with these words. He has loved the Harry Potter series of stories since he was a child. Even after graduating from college and becoming a corporate slave, he would occasionally watch the movies to relieve that magical world. At this moment, he just felt a little magical. Based on the current situation, reasonable analysis and inference, and after eliminating all impossibilities, the truth that remains, no matter how incredible it is the fact. He seemed to have traveled into the world of Harry Potter. And he inexplicably appeared in the house of the crazy girl Luna. Next to my ear, little Luna's sweet voice continued. Are you really just a muggle? The ethereal and pleasant voice spoke to the boy with a hint of regret, talking to himself, not caring whether he got a response or not. I wish you were like me, so we could have company and play together, don't you think? Maybe, we can go to Hogwarts together in the future. Oh, by the way, if you are a muggle, you probably haven't heard of that school. It is one of the best schools in the wizarding world, Where is the greatest white wizard headmaster in the wizarding world, Albus Dumbledore? There was admiration and a hint of yearning in the little girl's tone. Upon hearing this, Yas quickly adjusted his mindset, and quickly accepted the reality that he had traveled to the world of Harry Potter, and began to think about his next plan. His current identity seems to be just a muggle who doesn't know magic. After traveling through time and space to this magical world, I can't explore this fantasy world in depth. This result is undoubtedly a bit disappointing. Yas sighed slightly in his heart. Perhaps when Luna wakes up, her father will cast a forgetfulness spell to erase her memory. His life will be completely isolated from the magical world and head towards an unknown direction. Thinking of this, Yas felt a little empty in his heart. Host detected, SWIBA system binding in progress, automatically matching identity for host, identity matching is successful. According to the background of the magic world, the host has been matched with one of the 28 sacred family bloodlines in the magic world, the only heir of the Shafik family, Aris Shafik. Identity information has been automatically transmitted and rationalized in this world. The system binding gift package has been issued, please check it yourself. A memory emerged in Aris' mind, which was about the identity of Aris Shafik, his general experiences from birth to now, and some information about his family background. At the same time, the voice of the system also shocked Yas. No, now it should be called Aris Shafik, who had been closing his eyes and pretending to be dead. He subconsciously sank his mind into his head, and suddenly a big gift bag glittering with golden light appeared in front of him. Is it the legendary Goldfinger system and novice gift pack that are essential for time travelers? Aris was a little excited, and all his attention was focused on the big gift bag in front of him. Open the gift bag. As a thought came to his mind, the golden gift bag slowly opened, flashing a dazzling light. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the innate ability, photographic memory. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the innate ability, super thinking. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the innate ability, super speed reading. Chapter 2. As the gift package was opened, the 3 rays of light merged into Aris's sea of consciousness. A feeling of blessing emerged from the bottom of his heart. He could clearly feel that his brain seemed to be transformed by some mysterious power. In his previous life, Aris was considered a top student, otherwise he would not have graduated from Peking University and Tsinghua University with excellent grades. And now, he could feel more clearly that his thoughts had become clearer and his mental acumen had become far beyond that of ordinary people. When a thought appeared in his mind, he would instantly think of countless related ideas. This kind of talent and ability that far exceeds that of ordinary people is probably not possessed even by the top academic geniuses at Peking University or Tsinghua University. It should be said that the system's capabilities are indeed extremely powerful. Not only that, the rewards for the gift pack are not over yet. After the 3 talents were integrated, the entire gift package turned into a roulette wheel that shone with golden light and looked simple and elegant. Then, the mysterious voice sounded again. I will extract magic talent for the host. Excellent magic talent will be the foundation for the host to gain a foothold in the magic world. I wish you good luck. The golden roulette wheel floated quietly in front of Aris' eyes, flashing with unfathomable power. He took a deep breath and looked carefully. This roulette wheel is very large and is divided into 5 large areas, which are distinguished by white, green, blue, purple and gold. The white area is the largest, occupying almost 1/3 of the roulette wheel, followed by green, blue. The smallest golden area is only about 1% of the size of the entire roulette wheel. Aris suddenly had a bad feeling. In an era when card drawing games are popular, you can guess what this roulette design is like without even looking at it. The white area is definitely the worst talent, and the gold area is naturally the best. What annoyed him was that this golden area was too small. With a 1% chance of getting the golden talent in one shot, it would be difficult even for a lucky person. For an unlucky player like me who can get hit by a car while walking on the road, you can imagine the result. Could it be that I got a loser template at the beginning? Before Yas could think deeply, the ancient golden roulette wheel had already started to turn slowly. Afterwards, the speed became faster and faster, until a series of afterimages were left. At this time, Yas could only see lights of various colors flashing on the roulette wheel, turning into a magical whirlwind-like vortex. 1% chance, unless the sun rises from the west. Aris smiled self-deprecatingly, not holding out much hope at all. However, having magical talent is better than having no talent at all. Even if he has the worst talent, he is confident that he can unleash a power far beyond that of ordinary people. As a top student, especially with 3 incredible learning talents rewarded by the system, he has great confidence. Besides, he was sure that this academic master system was not that simple. Aris was very clear-headed and waited silently. This time of talent extraction is related to his future destiny. Anyone else would inevitably feel uneasy, and he also knows the seriousness of the matter. In his impression of the magical world, talent determines everything. All those famous figures are people with excellent magical talents, amazing talents, and great reputations. It is very difficult for people with mediocre talents to make a comeback, even if they are descendants of the sacred 28 families with rich family backgrounds. This can be seen from the fact that those ancient wizard families have begun to slowly decline. Whether it is the first-generation Dark Lord Grindelwald, the second-generation Dark Lord Voldemort, or even Albus Dumbledore, in the final analysis, they are able to call the shots and influence an entire era by relying on their own powerful strength. The rule of the jungle in the magical world is more vividly reflected than in ordinary society. Aris is very clear about these. As his thoughts flowed, the roulette wheel in front of Aris began to slow down, and the roulette pointer slowly transitioned from the white area to the green area, and then to the blue area, gradually showing a tendency to stop. 1 lap, 2 laps. After spinning 3 more times, the roulette wheel had slowed down to a snail's pace. Even Aris became more serious at this time. Finally, the pointer slowly turned to the purple area, as if it would stop in the next second. Aris calculated silently in his mind, his eyes fixed on the pointer that was about to stop. Sure enough, it's useless. He sighed softly. Although the pointer was rotating at a snail's pace very slowly, it still firmly passed through the golden area, and then, stopped at the white area without any surprises. Aris' heart calmed down instead. In fact, he knew it very well. As long as the academic master system is still there, he has the capital to change his destiny. What else can I do if I'm not an African? Money cannot change your destiny. This kind of metaphysical power is comparable to the abnormality of the system. Just when he thought he had no choice but to accept his fate, the system's voice suddenly rang in his mind again. Since this is the first time the host has started the roulette, this draw can be repeated indefinitely until you get a satisfactory talent template. There are no unlucky people in the world of academic masters, only destined probabilities. I wish you a pleasant experience. The sudden reversal made Aris stunned for a moment, and then he almost laughed out loud. Very good, it turns out that only the system can defeat the mysterious metaphysical power. This system is awesome. Probability determines everything. This alternative sense of security is so comfortable. This kind of welfare is simply too friendly for non-Africans. So, if you want to draw the golden talent, how many times do you need to repeat it? Aris calculated the probability in his mind and calmly spun the roulette wheel again. The magical vortex appeared again. Second time, blue talent, pass. The third time, another white talent, pass. The fourth time, I was lucky enough to get a purple score, but still passed. Are you kidding? It can be repeated infinitely, why not get a golden talent? After that, there were dozens of draws, but not a single drop of gold appeared. The power of metaphysics remains strong. Fortunately, the system's first lottery can be reset infinitely. Time and again. Aris's mood was always calm, without a trace of anxiety. Finally, after more than 10 minutes, a ray of golden light shone out from the roulette wheel. Golden legend. The bright light was reflected in Aris' eyes. The pointer of the roulette wheel stopped and stayed steadily in a very small golden area. The exciting moment came. Finally, it's done. Aris was slightly happy. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the golden talent template. As the system's voice sounded, the system's rewards appeared in front of Aris. Talent template, Merlin. Chapter 3. Talent template, Merlin White Magic, SSS Black Magic, SS plus Defense, SS plus Transfiguration, SSS Potion, S plus Alchemy, S plus, Special Talents, Almighty Shapeshifter, Prophecy Astrologer, Wandless Casting, Language of Nature Innate Comprehensive Ability, SSS Level. Evaluation. In the distant past, the great Merlin was known as the god of magic. His magical talent almost reached the limit of mortals, comparable to that of gods, and he was the well-deserved pinnacle of the magic world. Note, magic talent levels are divided into 10 levels from high to low, SSS, SS, S, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. If any talent reaches S level or above, you can become a contemporary master in that field. Looking at the golden talent card floating in front of him, Aris' eyes lit up. Although he was confident in his learning ability, he knew that even with ordinary magic talent, he would definitely be able to achieve something. But now, the talent card of Merlin, the legendary super boss who holds the title of God of Magic and is widely known in the magic world, is right in front of him. It would be a lie to say that he is not excited. All magic-related talents are above S level, and the white magic and transfiguration talents have even reached the highest SSS level talent. This is the limit of mortal talent, and can even be compared to gods. Such a powerful talent, even if given to a fool, the magic power that naturally grows over time may make that fool become a terrifying human weapon. What's more, he has a learning system. In addition, Merlin's several special talents also surprised Aris. According to rumors, Merlin has the talent to transform into many animals and can communicate with all animals. He is also a great prophetic astrologer who often helps King Arthur to predict his fortune. Needless to say, these talents are extremely powerful. Among these several powerful special talents, even the most common wandless casting is extremely rare in today's magic world and can be regarded as an extremely important talent. You know, many wizards are almost the same as muggles without their wands. In Aris's impression, only a few powerful wizards standing at the top of the magical world, such as Dumbledore, have the ability to cast spells proficiently without a wand, and the power of the spells is greatly weakened. This shows how powerful this talent is. At this moment, Aris couldn't even imagine how far he could grow after possessing these incredible talents. Perhaps, it was only a matter of time before he surpassed top wizards such as Dumbledore and 2 generations of Dark Lords. Fusion Talent Card. As Aris had a thought, the golden talent card in his mind quickly turned into a golden light and merged into the depths of his soul. The wonderful feeling made his soul tremble. It's like experiencing bliss on earth. In the room, little Luna's waist-length golden hair, which looked a little messy, fell on Aris' ears. Her silver eyes looked at the boy's face and hair curiously. The whole person looks ethereal and has a very special temperament. Until this moment, she seemed to still firmly believe that a boy with such beautiful long hair and such a good-looking face must be extraordinary, at least, he must have some unique qualities. Suddenly, a mysterious force radiated from Aris and spread to all directions. Little Luna's golden hair was blown by an invisible force, swaying like waves, and under this force, her whole body slowly left the floor of the room and floated in the air. Not only her, but all other movable objects and tables and chairs in the room also floated into the air at the same time as if they had escaped the Earth's gravity, and then slowly rotated around Aris. This is a magic riot. A look of surprise appeared on little Luna's face. The fusion of Aris and Merlin's talent cards caused extremely strong magical fluctuations. She didn't realize at all that she was in a very dangerous situation. The first thought that flashed through her mind was, the little brother in front of her really had magical talent like her, and was not a muggle as her father said. Little Luna was floating in the air with her arms open and a happy smile on her face. She was like an elf, enjoying the feeling of weightlessness, flying around the little boy on the bed. Until a burst of hurried footsteps sounded from outside the door. Xenophilius Lovegood flung open the door. He looked at everything in the room with surprise, his body trembling slightly unconsciously. His wand had been drawn out and was in his hand, as if he was ready to cast a spell at any time. Luna, what have you done? Xianyo, short name of Luna's father, looked at little Luna anxiously, thinking that the magic riot in the room was caused by his daughter, so he did not react immediately. Father, it's not me. Little Luna still had a happy smile on her face as she looked at Aris who was lying on the bed. I told you, this little brother is definitely not an ordinary person. This is his magic going wild. It's him. Xianyo turned his gaze and looked at Aris. His wrong judgment just now was obviously due to his deep love for his daughter. After regaining his composure, he also felt the source of the magical riot in the room. This force is so strong. Who is this little guy? Xianyo frowned, and besides shock, there was a hint of worry on his face. He began to feel that things were getting a little tricky. Everything that happened before his eyes forced him to admit that the boy picked up by little Luna also had wizard blood like them. Moreover, this bloodline seems to be very unusual. Generally speaking, the strength of a wizard's talent is directly related to his bloodline. This is a fact recognized by almost the entire wizarding world. Although this connection sometimes has exceptions for some reasons. For example, the existence of mudbloods. Aris's identity made Xianyo a little nervous about the magical riot that could cause such a big commotion. The sound hit the ground. Zeno waved his wand gently, and the floating objects in the room instantly lost their floating power and fell to the ground one after another, including little Luna, who was still a little reluctant to leave and was caught by her father and carefully placed on the ground. "Father, can we take in my little brother?" Although Aris' identity has not been confirmed, the little girl obviously feels that as long as they are the same kind of person, they don't have to worry about the provisions of the confidentiality law and can play together in the future. She didn't seem to realize, or didn't care at all, that having an unidentified little boy appear in her home would be a very troublesome thing. Zeno did not answer little Luna's question, but looked at Aris again. Then he walked to the bed. "Wake up, I know you're awake." Chapter 4. Xianyo's calm voice, with a hint of seriousness, rang out in the room. As an adult wizard, he is not an ignorant little girl like Luna. Magical riots usually occur when the wizard is awake and extremely emotionally unstable. So he was sure that Aris was awake at this time. As for why he didn't open his eyes, that's also why his voice became serious. He instinctively felt that the little boy in front of him was not that simple. At this time, Aris had completely integrated the power of Merlin's talent card, and had already sensed Zeno's arrival. He knew it was impossible to continue pretending, so he could only slowly open his eyes. He glanced around the room, then looked at Zeno calmly. "Who are you anyway?" Xianyo's voice was serious, even a little sharp. To his surprise, Aris remained calm, without a trace of panic, and had a composure that was totally unlike that of a man of his age. "My name is Aris, Aris Shafik." "Excuse me, what is this place?" Facing the calm Aris, Xianyo's expression became more serious. For some reason, when facing the little boy in front of him, he felt like he was facing an adult man who had experienced the world, not a child at all. At the same time, he was still a little hesitant. Shafik? This surname made him unconsciously think of something. As he thought about it, his expression suddenly changed. He looked at the boy carefully, with an expression of inexplicable surprise and confusion on his face. "Don't be nervous, we have no ill intentions." Before Xianyo could say anything, little Luna couldn't help but jog to Aris' side. With a cute smile on her face, she stretched out her tender little hand and said, "This is my home, my name is Luna Lovegood, this is my father, nice to meet you." The pleasant voice was ethereal and carried a reassuring kindness. "Nice to meet you." Aris smiled and reached out to shake hands with little Luna. He said this from the bottom of his heart. Before coming to this world, he liked Luna, the elf-like girl in the magic world. At this moment, holding the girl's hand, he could clearly feel the warmth of his palm. That feeling was very dreamy. Xianyo stared in a daze at the two children's quick friendship, but his inner surprise became more and more intense, and he was also filled with deep confusion. "Shafik? What is your relationship with the Shafik family?" In the end, he couldn't help but blurt out his inner doubts. Aris turned to look at Xianyo and was about to speak. At this moment, an owl suddenly hooted outside the window. Then, an agile figure flew in from the open window. An owl circled in the room and accurately threw a letter in front of Aris. "Is this the acceptance letter from Hogwarts?" Xianyo was stunned for a moment, then cried out in confusion. He naturally recognized the familiar logo on the envelope. And obviously, this admission letter was sent to Aris, because little Luna was not yet 11 years old. The most important magical artifact at Hogwarts, the Book of Admission and the Pen of Acceptance, which are responsible for monitoring the admission of young wizards of school age, will never send out the wrong admission letter. "You actually received an acceptance letter from Hogwarts." Little Luna was obviously stunned for a moment, but she quickly recovered. A smile reappeared on her face, with a hint of excitement in her expression. "Hurry and take a look at what's written on the letter from Hogwarts." Listening to little Luna's voice, Aris was a little confused, so much so that he forgot to continue answering Xianyo's questions. He had just crossed over, and the acceptance letter from Hogwarts had already arrived? Was it so fast? He picked up the parchment envelope in front of him belatedly. There was a dark red wax seal on the envelope, and below the wax seal was a shield-shaped emblem consisting of a lion, an eagle, a badger, and a snake surrounding a capital letter H, a very familiar pattern. Turning the envelope over, the address was written in emerald green ink and very beautiful handwriting: Aris Shafik, Lovegood House, 2nd floor, room on the left, near the hill, Autry Street Catchpole. The magical sheepskin envelope excited Aris, and he felt excited unconsciously, as if he saw a fantasy world opening its doors to him, and he could get an admission ticket as long as he opened the envelope. Open it. Little Luna was even more anxious than Aris. Seeing that he was in a daze, she couldn't help but urge him. Aris turned his head and glanced at the little girl, nodded slightly, then took a deep breath, opened the wax seal, took out the parchment letter inside and began to read. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, President of the International Confederation of Wizards, First Class Grand Mage of Merlin's Order, Chief Mage of the Wizengamot, dear Mr. Shafik, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted to study at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Enclosed is a list of required books and equipment. The semester is scheduled to start on September 1st. We will be waiting for your owl letter by August 1st. Vice Principal Sincerely, Minerva McGonagall. After reading the letter, Aris looked at the thick parchment in his hand. That should be the list of books and equipment he was about to buy at Diagonal. Since it was his first time to enroll, there were quite a few categories. Then, the content of the letter reminded him of something. Reply before August 1st? He remembered that Harry Potter's letter stated that he had to reply before July 31st, which was his birthday. It seems that the admission letters sent by Hogwarts generally require a reply before the 11th birthday in order to confirm the final list of young wizards admitted. You are actually a descendant of the Shafik family among the 28 sacred families. How is this possible? Zeno looked at the letter in Aris's hand and murmured. The confusion on his face had all turned into shock. In the wizarding world, bloodline means something extraordinary. The surname Shafik represents one of the 28 sacred families. Apart from the members of this family, it is impossible for anyone else to have this surname. The admission letter from Hogwarts has proved that Aris is indeed a young wizard, so there is a 90% chance that his true identity is a member of Shafik. He lowered his head in thought, frowning slightly. What's wrong, father? Little Luna looked over. Aris was also a little confused. He didn't know why Xianyo suddenly confirmed that he was a member of the Shafik family, even though the identity assigned to him by the system did belong to this family. And he is the final heir. Xianyo looked up at Aris, his tone still clearly filled with surprise. Rumor has it that ever since the rise of, well, that mysterious man whose name no one dares to mention, the last two members of the Shafik family have mysteriously disappeared from the wizarding world, and their whereabouts have been unknown. Some even say that they were all brutally murdered for disobeying the mysterious man, and that's why they disappeared without a trace. Other holy families also kept silent about this outcome. We all thought that the Shafik family no longer existed. And as a descendant of the Shafik family, how come you are here? Aris frowned slightly and thought quickly in his mind. First of all, the identity of the time traveler must not be revealed. He now needs to reveal some information reasonably to confirm his identity as the last heir of the Shafik family without arousing Xianyo's suspicion. How to say it specifically requires some skills. The character of Xianyo in the original novel is pretty good. Before getting more familiar with this world, staying here seems to be a good choice. Chapter 5. It looks like a drama is about to begin. Aris sighed inwardly. After a moment, when he looked up again, his eyes were full of confusion and helplessness. I don't know either. I don't remember anything about the past. I seem to have been wandering since I could remember, until I fainted from hunger one day ago, and appeared here after I woke up. Listening to Aris' words, Xianyo frowned slightly. You're still a child, how can you survive out there by yourself? Xianyo was obviously not satisfied with the answer, and his tone was questioning. Father, you also know that he is just a child. Little Luna looked at Xianyo with some blame, as if she was a little dissatisfied with his questioning tone. Sorry, I just wanted to know more about you earlier so that I could send you home as soon as possible. Xianyo's tone softened a little, but his attitude was still a little stiff. It's okay, I'm used to it. Aris said calmly. He looked at Xianyo and said seriously, during my years of wandering, I've even seen people with worse attitudes than you. I've lived under a bridge, seen food in a trash can, and fought with stray dogs. There were even several times when I thought I would not survive the cold and dark night and would not see the sun the next day. You saved me, and I am very grateful. With that, Aris stood up and bowed to Zeno and little Luna. Then he turned and walked towards the door. Aris wasn't making these words up, they were truly the real experiences in the little boy's memory. They were included in the information transmitted to him by the system, so it wasn't really acting. However, the person who experienced these things was not strictly speaking him. Wait, where are you going? Before Xianyo could respond, little Luna couldn't help but step forward and grabbed Aris, with a hint of anxiety in her tone. I think maybe I shouldn't stay here any longer. The confusion on Aris's face disappeared in time, replaced by a childlike stubbornness. Father. Little Luna frowned slightly. Xianyo opened his mouth, but finally sighed. Maybe you can rest here for a night. He obviously didn't expect Aris's experience to be so rough, and he seemed to feel a little uncomfortable for a while. His eyes gradually softened and his tone became much softer. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure. Even so, the worry in Xianyo's eyes did not disappear. He knew very well that since the Hogwarts pen of acceptance and book of admission had acknowledged Aris's surname, it could not be wrong. According to the current situation, Aris is very likely the last bloodline of the Shafik family, and naturally the last heir of this ancient wizard family. No one does not know what an ancient wizard family, especially the last heir of the 28 sacred bloodline families, represents. He will own the wealth of the entire Shafik family. You know, each of the 28 sacred families was once glorious, and the Shafik family's industries are almost spread throughout the entire wizarding world. There are even rumors that they have considerable assets in the Muggle world. At this time, Aris was just a little boy who had just turned 11 years old. As many pure-blood families in the wizarding world are now on the decline, it is inevitable that some people will covet this considerable wealth and thus develop disloyal ideas. If the little boy was left behind, the Lovegood family would most likely be implicated. Father, Aris shouldn't suffer any more. Let's take him in. As a little girl, little Luna naturally couldn't think as comprehensively as Xianyo. She just felt that Aris' life experience was too pitiful and wanted to help him. Girls are more emotional, and she also had a good impression of Aris. At this moment, the little girl looked at Aris with a little heartache in her eyes. After hearing Luna's words, Zeno fell silent. Father, little Luna's clear, bright silver eyes were firm and pleading. She didn't make a fuss like other children, but Xianyo just fell for her daughter's behavior. He sighed and said helplessly, Okay, I think you can reply to Hogwarts first. He rubbed his forehead and said to Aris, It's not impossible to leave after you go to school and find your own home. Hearing this, Aris was certain. Although I had anticipated this result, I still feel a lot more at ease at this moment. At least, he now has a temporary place to stay. Thanks. He bowed sincerely to Zeno and little Luna again. Having just traveled through time, having a place to stay was a good thing for Aris after all, and he was indeed grateful in his heart. Half an hour later, an owl flew towards Hogwarts with Aris's reply. And Aris was finally able to have a good look around the house. This cylindrical house has 3 floors and an attic, with 2 rooms on each floor. Little Luna lives opposite Aris's room, Zeno lives on the first floor, and the 3rd floor and the attic are used to store sundries. This 3-story building was filled with the Quibbler magazines and some small gadgets that were not often seen in ordinary households. They were all collected by little Luna, such as butterbeer bottle corks and demon-proof glasses. She loves collecting these little gadgets. Outside, a gentle breeze ruffled the vast expanse of green grass. The Lovegood family home is located on a relatively flat hill. The cylindrical house standing at an angle stands out from the green grass, like a solitary tower floating on the green ocean, mysterious and quiet. With the last rays of sunset, Aris and little Luna sat quietly on the steps at the door, looking into the distance. Next to them, there were many vine plants on the outer wall of the house, with small ornaments hanging on them that looked like Christmas gifts. It looked a bit incongruous, but Aris thought it was quite interesting. Luna, have you ever thought about the nature of magic? Feeling the breeze blowing across his face, Aris subconsciously raised his hand, and countless green grass leaves suddenly floated up, dancing and jumping around the 2 of them in the breeze. His instinct as a top student made him think of more profound questions whenever he thought of magic. Before Luna could answer, the system's voice suddenly sounded in her mind. Ding, the task system is activated. When 3 people walk together, there must be one person who can be my teacher. As a top student, you should always be thirsty for knowledge. Daily task, ask questions to the teacher and get answers 0/3. You can get academic points by completing the task. Note, the questions raised must be knowledge that the host has not mastered. Chapter 6. When the system voice sounded, Aris' heart trembled slightly, and he subconsciously looked at the system panel. Mission system? Completing the mission will earn you academic points. What's the use of academic ability? As if sensing Aris's thoughts, the system's prompt sounded again. Academic ability points can be used for redemption and lucky draws, please check the instructions for details. Along with the system's explanation, Luna's voice came from the side. The nature of magic? I didn't expect you to be interested in this. The little girl was obviously a little surprised, but soon a smile appeared on her face, as if she had found a confidant. I once asked my father this question too. He said it was a gift, a different talent given to us by God, but I thought it might be some kind of strange energy, and we just have the ability to communicate with this energy. Luna actually has her own thoughts on this issue. Just this one point is enough to show the difference between her and other little wizards. Other little wizards who are not even 11 years old would not think about such profound questions, let alone discuss them with others with such interest. You know what? Aris waved gently. The dancing green grass leaves in front of him formed a string of symbols that little Luna couldn't understand, like some kind of equation. I once wandered in the Muggle world and learned some knowledge, such as this. The air we breathe now is made up of many elements, including nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and so on. In the Muggle world, each type of energy has a similar formula for composition. Humans can study these elements to analyze more mysterious molecules, atoms, and even the microscopic world. I'm thinking that maybe magic energy also has an elemental composition formula, but we haven't studied it in depth. Even in the entire wizarding world, no one has really studied it. Aris kept thinking in his mind, and his eyes gradually brightened. If there really is such a substantial substance as magical energy, rather than a purely idealistic force, then as long as he can analyze this energy, perhaps he can change the entire landscape of the wizarding world. No, not just the wizarding world. At that time, perhaps even ordinary people could practice magic. The whole world will undergo earth-shaking changes. Your idea is really bold. Little Luna turned around, with surprise and a glimmer in her eyes. It is also very interesting, and even, the meaning contained in it is somewhat fascinating. If you really want to study it in depth, maybe you can get help from the professor when you go to Hogwarts. I think so. Aris smiled. The task system has been activated. From now on, you can earn academic points by asking questions every day. Obviously, there will be a lot of trouble for the professors in the future. However, Aris still has some doubts about the system tasks. Does teacher mean that you can only ask questions to the teacher? As soon as this question came up, the system prompt sounded again. It's also a reminder to get rewards. Congratulations to the host for completing 1/3 of the daily task and obtaining 100 points of academic strength. Although little Luna did not give a complete answer about the nature of magic, the system actually determined that the task was completed, and the progress of the daily task became 1/3. This result is quite spiritual. Aris was lost in thought for a moment. It seems that further research is needed to determine whether the system task is completed. Then, Aris' heart moved slightly, and he turned to look at little Luna, ready to try again. Luna, do you know how to strengthen magic power? The little girl did not disappoint Aris. She tilted her head slightly, as if thinking for a moment, and then spoke. I heard from my father that the magic power of wizards can only grow naturally with age. Under normal circumstances, it will reach its peak in middle age and then begin to gradually weaken. Of course, there are exceptions, such as Albus Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts. Besides that, it is extremely difficult to increase magic power through other means. Perhaps some magical potion or alchemical product can do it. Father doesn't seem to be very clear about these more profound questions. Aris nodded thoughtfully. Then, the system's voice sounded again. Congratulations to the host for completing 2/3 of the daily tasks and obtaining 200 points of academic strength. Sure enough, it was not a coincidence just now. As long as the person being asked answers the questions raised in the daily tasks and obtains valid information, the tasks are completed. As for the reason for the different rewards, perhaps it is because of the completeness of the answer. The more accurate the answer, the higher the reward? Aris smiled. 3 people go together, there must be my teacher. The ancients were never deceiving me. Well, I have to try again. But this time, we need to change our thinking. Luna. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I will answer them all. Little Luna also seemed to enjoy the feeling of teaching others knowledge and looked eager to try. Yet, a smile appeared on Aris' face. Little girl, you are such a nice person. Then he thought about it and an idea suddenly came to his mind. Luna, what's in your father's left clothing bag? Ah! Little Luna was stunned when she heard this question. Then, she looked at Aris with a strange expression. Aris, why are you asking this? Nothing, just a little curious. Aris touched his nose. In fact, he just wanted to test whether the daily 3-question task could be triggered by asking any question. Little Luna hesitated for a moment, but finally nodded. Then wait a moment, I'll go ask. Having said that, the little girl stood up and went back to the house. It looked like he was about to open his father's clothes bag to verify something. Well, Luna is also very rigorous. Looking at the little girl's back as she turned and left, Aris nodded with satisfaction. No wonder he will be a Ravenclaw student in the future, his thirst for knowledge is really strong. Aris looked up and stretched his neck. At this moment, a black dot suddenly appeared in the distance and was getting closer. That's an owl. Soon, the owl dropped a letter into Aris's hands. This was another letter from Hogwarts. Aris took out the letter from the sheepskin envelope and read it. Dear Mr. Shafik, since this is your first time enrolling and your circumstances are special, Hogwarts will send a professor to you tomorrow to understand the situation and explain it to you. Sincerely, Minerva McGonagall. Looking at the letter in his hand, Aris lowered his head and thought for a while. Then, his expression turned a little strange. It seems that Hogwarts pays a lot of attention to me. After all, ordinary students don't have the treatment of having professors come to their homes to guide them. This kind of situation usually only occurs in students with more complicated backgrounds, such as those from Muggle families and saviors. But soon, Aris changed his mind. I heard that Professor McGonagall is very knowledgeable. I must ask him questions, especially about the nature of magic. Maybe I can get some information without having to wait to go to Hogwarts. Murmuring whispers drifted in the sunset breeze. Chapter 7. Inside the house, Zeno was standing at the second-floor window, looking at the boy below. He had just seen Aris casually waving the grass leaves. Even at this moment, there was still a hint of surprise on his face, his brows slightly wrinkled, and the worry in his eyes seemed to be more obvious. Such a strong magical talent. He has not even entered school yet, but he can control the grass leaves to fly and form specific shapes. This child's magical talent is amazing. He is worthy of being the bloodline of the 28 sacred families. I should have known that he would not be ordinary. It seems. I have to find out about the Shafik family as soon as possible. It would be best if he could be sent away as soon as possible. Otherwise, we don't know what kind of trouble it will cause. Although this is a bit cruel. Luna must not be harmed. As the gentle murmur died down, a look of determination appeared in Xianyo's eyes. To him, his daughter is the most important thing. For Luna, he would even sell his soul, let alone a little boy who was not related to him in any way. Father, what are you doing here? Suddenly, little Luna's voice came from behind. Xianyo quickly calmed himself down and put a smile on his face. I was just wondering what I should make for Luna tonight. How about some bread and butter? And some of your favorite Gordigan tea, these two go perfectly together. I can already smell the aroma of Gordigan tea. Little Luna smiled and shrugged, indicating that there was no problem. By the way, father, what do you have in the left pocket of your clothes? Ah! Xianyo was stunned for a moment. Nothing. He subconsciously touched his left pocket, his face looking a little embarrassed. Why is Luna suddenly asking such a strange question? Oh, it's Aris, he said. He was a little curious. Luna didn't notice the hint of embarrassment on Zeno's face. She approached swiftly and reached her little hand directly into her father's pocket. Then, a pair of smelly socks with a slightly strange smell were pulled out by little Luna. Little Luna stuffed the socks back into Xianyo's pocket with some disgust, and said unhappily, Father, your socks should be washed. They won't get clean automatically if they are in your pocket. As she said that, the little girl gave Xianyo a strange look, turned around and trotted downstairs. Xianyo still hadn't reacted until this point. Aris? Curious what's in my pocket? What does that kid mean? Suddenly interested in his pocket and asked Luna to come and see it. Can you still do something useful? His old father is completely embarrassed. As expected, boys are just not as cute as girls. That's a stinky sock. Little Luna muttered unhappily as she returned to Aris's side. Aris's expression became a little strange, and a thought unconsciously emerged in his mind. I didn't expect Xianyo to have such a habit of putting smelly socks in his pocket. Is this something a human would do? At the same time, the system's voice sounded again. Congratulations to the host for completing 3/3 of the daily tasks and obtaining 10 points of academic strength. Aris was stunned for a moment. That works too. But why is the reward so small? He fell into deep thought. Perhaps, the reward for the 3 questions per day is directly linked to the quality of the questions. It seems that it won't be so easy to complete tasks quickly in the future. Fortunately, the definition of a teacher is not just a teacher. This means that Aris can ask questions to anyone, including a random passerby on the street. Aris returned his attention to the system panel. At this time, the panel showed that he already had 310 academic points, so it was time to spend some. Aris had previously figured out how to use the academic ability points through the system's instructions. At this moment, a thought flashed through his mind, and a roulette wheel suddenly appeared again. However, unlike the previous talent wheel, this roulette wheel was obviously more fancy. On the colorful roulette wheel, each area is of a different size, representing items of different qualities. Start the lottery. As Aris's mind moved, the system prompt sounded. Do you want to spend 100 points to participate in the primary lottery? Yes. The colorful roulette wheel started spinning. Aris didn't have high hopes for the first lottery draw. He just wanted to try his hand, and also take a look at the cost of the colorful roulette draw and what rewards were included. Of course, it would be best if the lucky guy could get something good. But it is obvious that it is impossible to be European Emperor, never. When the colorful turntable stopped, the pointer stopped in the white area without surprise. Congratulations to the host for obtaining gold galleon *10. 10 gold coins? This reward. As expected, you shouldn't have any expectations for white quality. Aris smiled bitterly and shook his head. But then, his eyes lit up. Because the system's voice suddenly sounded again. The points mall is now open, and you can use your academic points to redeem items. Entering the mall, there was only one lonely item inside, shining with golden light. Don't get me wrong. That was not a gold quality item, but the gold galleon that Aris had just won in the lottery. After clicking, the redemption price will also appear. 10 galleons equals 100 points. It doesn't look expensive, but according to the current rate of earning points, it seems not cheap either. Aris frowned slightly. It seems that I still need to study carefully to see how to earn more points. There were still 210 points left, so Aris didn't hesitate too much and made 2 consecutive draws. There isn't anything good in the mall now, and the remaining points seem to have no other use except for the lottery. As the roulette wheel spun, a flash of white light flashed again, followed by a flash of purple. Purple quality? Aris was shocked. This time my luck seems to be good, I actually got a purple one. Congratulations to the host for winning gold galleon 10. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a magic potion. 1 magic potion, use it to permanently increase your magic power by 10 points. It turned out to be a potion that could permanently increase magic power. Aris was delighted. At the same time, the option to redeem magic potions also appeared in the points mall. Magic potion *1 equals 1000 points. This price may seem expensive now, but as more ways to earn points become available, it shouldn't be difficult to redeem them in the future. With this thing, wouldn't it be equivalent to being able to increase magic power infinitely in the future? You know, even for Dumbledore and a few other super wizards at the top of the pyramid, the total amount of magic power is limited, and the upper limit of human wizards is there. And he already has the possibility to break through the upper limit. Countless thoughts flashed through Aris' mind, and he finally let out a long sigh of relief. You still have to eat your meal 1 bite at a time. Although the magic potion is very tempting, it is useless without points. The most important thing now is to get academic points as soon as possible. Chapter 8. Hogwarts, Headmaster's Office. As the stone statue of the revolving staircase door slowly turned, Professor McGonagall pushed the door and walked into the principal's office. Principal Dumbledore, we haven't received a response to the letter we sent to little Harry. Should we send someone to check it out as soon as possible? I think there must be some trouble over there. Don't worry, Minerva. Behind the desk, Albus Dumbledore closed a thick book and spoke slowly. The azure eyes behind his half-moon-shaped eyes look sharp and bright, yet give people a reassuring gentle strength. His long silver hair and beard are very distinctive, and his wizard temperament is extremely prominent. On the shelf next to the desk, the Phoenix Fox raised his head, glanced at Professor McGonagall, then lowered his head and continued to tidy up his wings with his pointed beak. He didn't seem very interested in the visitor. Dumbledore stood up and sorted the books on his desk. Then he waved his hand gently, and they all floated up and automatically returned to the bookshelf. That child has been through a lot. We should have thought that it wouldn't be so easy for him to get here. So, I have arranged for Hagrid to pick him up. It may take a little while. Dumbledore blinked, naturally giving people a sense of security that everything was under control. Hagrid? Are you confident in entrusting such an important matter to him? Professor McGonagall was not optimistic and frowned slightly. She always felt that Hagrid, who had the blood of a giant, was always a little slow in handling certain things and might not be suitable for doing this. I can trust Hagrid with my life, Minerva. Dumbledore looked at Professor McGonagall deeply and replied seriously, believe me, in 2 months, you will definitely see that child in school. I hope everything goes well. Professor McGonagall still couldn't be completely relieved, and there was a hint of worry in his eyes. That's right. She seemed to suddenly remember something, her brows furrowed again, and there was a hint of doubt in her tone. Today, a descendant of the Shafik family suddenly appeared on the list of young wizards for admission. We have sent out the owl letter and received a response. The Shafik family. Dumbledore seemed to be interested, and a barely perceptible light flashed behind his half-moon eyes. This surname hasn't appeared in a while. Are you sure? Professor McGonagall nodded slightly, then shook her head, confusion still on her face. Before that name appeared in the admission book, I always thought that the Shafik family had disappeared. After all, back then. At this point, she paused and then sighed softly. Since the bloodline of the Shafik family appears on the list, it shouldn't be wrong. Dumbledore's tone became a little more serious. Professor McGonagall hesitated for a moment, but still asked with a hint of inquiry, at that time, the last 2 members of the Shafik family suddenly disappeared mysteriously from the wizarding world, and there has been no news since then. Do you know anything about this matter? After all, if anyone in this world knows, it should be only you and that mysterious man. Facing Dumbledore's gaze, Professor McGonagall paused. Of course, if you don't want to say. There's nothing to hide. The situation at that time was very strange. I couldn't see it clearly. It was a kind of ancient magic that seemed to be related to time and space. That day, we witnessed an extremely mysterious and powerful force. As he spoke, a look of reminiscence emerged on Dumbledore's face, mixed with a hint of emotion, as if he was recalling something that had shocked him as well. Professor McGonagall's brows slightly wrinkled at some point, with a hint of surprise in his eyes, as if he couldn't imagine some mysterious power that even Dumbledore couldn't understand. She knew Dumbledore's erudition and strength very well. This was exactly what she was worried about. The child named Aris might be the last heir of the Shafik family, but she or the school knew almost nothing about the child. Well, child, are you going to meet him in person? Dumbledore had obviously guessed Professor McGonagall's thoughts and asked thoughtfully. Yes, Principal, I still think we should meet the child first. That's fine. Dumbledore nodded slightly, and then suddenly asked, by the way, what's the child's name? Aris Shafik. Well, that's a great name. The silver-haired old wizard nodded thoughtfully, not knowing what he was thinking about. Thank you for your hard work, Minerva. The conversation between the two ended quickly, and even when Professor McGonagall's back disappeared behind the revolving stone door, Dumbledore's expression was still somewhat meaningful. After a long time, he suddenly raised his head and waved gently. The quill pen on the table seemed to come alive, quickly writing lines on the parchment. Finally, the letter paper folded automatically and put into an envelope. Fox, please. Dumbledore gently stroked the feathers of the phoenix beside him and murmured. The phoenix was extremely human-like. It chirped softly, then picked up the envelope on the table. Its flaming red wings fluttered as it flew out of Hogwarts Castle at an extremely fast speed, gradually disappearing into the distant sky. It is very late at night. Aris was lying on the bed on the 2nd floor of the black cylindrical house. Although he had his eyes closed, he couldn't fall asleep, as if a mysterious force was exciting his nerves. Everything that happened today seemed like a dream to him. Until this moment, he was not sure that all this was true. However, the panel displayed on the system in his mind told him that this was not a dream. This night is so long. Aris sat up in bed and rubbed his head gently. He couldn't wait to see the dawn. Because after dawn, the professors of Hogwarts will arrive. Maybe it's Professor Snape, the long-haired professor who always has a stern face and is against the protagonist Harry, or Professor McGonagall, who looks serious but actually cares very much about his students. No matter who it is, Aris has some expectations. Tonight's dinner was a little new to him, but it really didn't taste that good. Having been spoiled by the delicious food of the eastern country, Xianyo found it difficult to swallow the butter bread and the strange-tasting tea. He didn't know what kind it was. He took a sip of water, but did not lie down again. Instead, he picked up a book on the bedside table and started reading. The title of the book was The Quibbler. This is the latest issue of the magazine that little Luna gave her. After just 1 minute of watching, the system voice in my mind sounded as expected. Congratulations to the host for reading a book for 1 minute and gaining 1 point of academic power. Chapter 9. Aris' latest discovery is that reading books can earn academic points. Originally, he wanted to borrow some teaching books from Luna, such as standard spells, to see if he could try to learn some spells in advance. After all, his talent is strong enough, and he has a special talent for casting spells without a wand. Theoretically there should be no problem. But Xianyo strongly recommended the Quibbler to him. When Aris saw the expectant and sincere expression on the uncle's face, he had to accept it gladly. After all, it didn't want to hurt his feelings. Aris expected that reading books could increase points. After all, it was a system for top students. Isn't the essence of top students to practice questions and read books like crazy? What he didn't expect was that he could actually earn academic points by reading magazines. This is undoubtedly an unexpected gain. It seems that the system's judgment on the boundaries of reading is not that strict. As long as it's a book, I'm not picky. The night is getting darker. The light in the small house stayed on until the early morning. With the help of his super-speed reading talent, Aris happily finished reading all the recent issues of The Quibbler, and only after earning an extra 300 points did he fall asleep contentedly. Most importantly, with his super thinking and photographic memory, Aris has a more comprehensive understanding of the world after reading these journals. Although this magazine does not have the authority of the Daily Prophet, its perspective in analyzing events is extremely unique. Combined with the memories in Aris' mind, it can discover a lot of information that was not previously thought of. For example, how the Lucius family and several other pure-blood wizard families called the shots in the Ministry of Magic and how they shamelessly plundered property. In one issue of the magazine, the Minister of Magic was even belittled to the point of being worthless. Even Dumbledore was criticized by the Quibbler just because he often secretly gave advice to Minister of Magic fudge. This made Aris secretly amazed for a moment. A journal had the guts to openly attack the Minister of Magic, who was considered the official power in the wizarding world. After doing such a thing, the Quibbler had not been closed down yet. It is really a magical thing. Aris gradually fell asleep in a drowsy and chaotic state. But all kinds of strange images kept flashing in my mind. Sometimes there were shrill screams, sometimes spells flashing green light were flying around, and sometimes a strange face with no nose or other obvious facial features appeared, looking at him in horror. This time, I still couldn't sleep well. After a long time, the sky gradually brightened. The morning sun shines on the green grass outside, and the breeze creates green waves, making people feel particularly relaxed. It's a new day again. Bang, bang, bang. Aris was awakened by a series of rapid knocks on the door. Luna didn't even consider whether the people in the house were awake and dressed, and she just barged in naturally. Aris, get up. The boy, who was still a little groggy, opened his eyes and turned around to see the cute girl lying on the bed. Her long golden hair and fair face were particularly eye-catching. Father said that the professors from Hogwarts should be here soon, you should get up quickly. Luna pulled Aris' sleeve without any hesitation and said seriously. Isn't this the character of this girl? Aris has a headache. In my memory, little Luna was an elf-like girl, how could she be so rude? It seems that there is still a difference between movies and reality after all. However, Aris soon came to his senses. The professor is coming soon. He glanced at the sun outside, then stood up and asked, what time is it now? How come it's coming so soon? It's almost 9 o'clock. I guess you didn't sleep well last night. Luna regained her ethereal and calm appearance, and the way she spoke seemed as if she was explaining something, appearing nonchalant, giving people a very special feeling. I really didn't sleep well. Aris yawned. He didn't care about the little girl breaking into the bedroom without permission. He got up and put on his clothes. He glanced at the magazines piled on the table and rubbed his temple. It seems that staying up late is not something we should do often. It's too harmful to your health. He is still a child now. Aris quickly gathered herself together and went downstairs with Luna. Before he finished the breakfast Xianyo had specially left for him, a crackling sound was heard not far outside the house, and then Xianyo suddenly stood up. Here it comes. Aris' heart moved. That crackling sound seemed somewhat familiar. It seemed to be the same sound that was made when wizards operate in the movies. Before Aris could think about it, there was a knock on the door. Excuse me, Mr. Lovegood, long time no see. As soon as Xianyo opened the door, he heard a female voice that sounded a little serious and had a natural and slightly stiff tone. Then, a witch in dark green robes walked in. Professor McGonagall, long time no see. Xianyo also smiled and said politely, I was wondering who Hogwarts would send to mentor this child, I didn't expect it would be you. Principal Dumbledore takes this child very seriously. Professor McGonagall raised her cheeks stiffly, revealing a smile that looked very forced. People who are familiar with her know that this is how she looks when she smiles. Of course, after all, this child is a little special. Zeno stepped aside and welcomed Professor McGonagall into the house. Professor McGonagall's gaze immediately turned to the boy sitting at the table, with a hint of curiosity in his eyes, but more of it was seriousness and earnestness. You are Aris Shafik, I presume. It's me. Aris has stood up. Oh, kid, don't be nervous. Professor McGonagall walked up, looked at the silver-haired boy carefully, and said, I am Minerva McGonagall, and I will be your professor at Hogwarts from now on. Although it's a bit presumptuous, I'm still a little curious. She suddenly turned her head and looked at Xianyo, why is this child here? Professor McGonagall was obviously still confused about Aris's origins and identity, and wanted to get some definite information from Xianyo. He was unconscious on the grass, so I brought him back. It was not Zeno who answered McGonagall, but Luna who had never spoken. She spoke in that unique way, in a calm tone. It was almost dark at that time, and I thought, we can't let him spend the night alone on the grass outside, right? Of course. Professor McGonagall nodded repeatedly. Her tone softened noticeably, and a smile returned to her face. You did the right thing. You are a smart child. I think when you enter Hogwarts, you will definitely be sorted into the Ravenclaw house because it will be filled with kind and smart children like you. After saying this, Professor McGonagall turned his gaze back to Aris, and his tone became gentler. So, what about you? Do you have any questions for me? Aris thought about it and nodded. There is indeed a problem. His eyes were clear and his face had a harmless innocence. The boy's tone was full of curiosity and thirst for knowledge, and he was very serious. Excuse me, Professor McGonagall, can you tell me what the nature of magic is? Chapter 10. After Aris finished speaking, the room fell into an eerie silence. Little Luna's eyes were shining, and she looked at Professor McGonagall with the same curiosity and inquiry. Obviously, she was also very interested in this question and wanted to get the answer from the Hogwarts professor. Xianyo was a little stunned, as if he didn't expect Aris to ask such a question. What is the nature of magic? Is this something an 11-year-old boy should worry about, or even think about? Even many wizards who have graduated from Hogwarts school have probably never thought about this question. For example, he himself has never thought about this issue carefully. Because in his opinion, there is no point in thinking about these things. The use of magic does not necessarily involve the study of the nature of magic. He always thought that it was just a wizard's talent, an innate ability. Child, maybe I heard it wrong. Professor McGonagall seemed to not believe that Aris would ask such a question, and asked for confirmation. You just asked, the nature of magic. Yes, Professor. Aris nodded affirmatively. I just found out yesterday that I'm a wizard, so I'm a little curious about magic. His expression was very serious, and there was no trace of joking in the look he gave McGonagall. This forced Professor McGonagall to take it seriously. Listen, kid, you're still young. She frowned slightly, with a look of earnest advice. After you go to school and learn how to control your magic power and truly understand the power of magic, it won't be too late to study such profound questions as the nature of magic. There's really no need to think so much right now, don't you think? In her opinion, it was not a good thing for a little wizard who had not yet attended school to be exposed to such profound issues too early. Especially when Aris was still very ignorant about magic. In the process of studying such profound issues, it is inevitable to encounter setbacks, which will undermine the self-confidence of the young wizard. Therefore, even if she knew the answer to this question, she probably wouldn't answer it at this time. Yes, if she knew the answer to this question. However, she expressed great satisfaction with Aris's eagerness to learn. Unlike some of the daredevils in her Gryffindor house, who spent every day thinking about how to make trouble and break school rules. I feel. Hearing this, Aris lowered his head and was silent for a moment, as if thinking about what Professor McGonagall meant. When he raised his head again, he saw the witch, who usually looked serious, looking at him with relief and a hint of nervousness. Perhaps, it's time for the other little wizards to back off. But, Aris doesn't. Because the system reward has not been received yet. Professor, you don't know that, do you? Of course I. Professor McGonagall subconsciously wanted to refute, but found that he didn't know how to start. The study of the nature of magic is the lifelong pursuit of many famous wizards, but no one has ever dared to say that they truly understand it. But she was just an ordinary professor at Hogwarts. Even if she knew some information, she could only understand the basics. At this moment, she suddenly realized that she really didn't know how to explain it to the little boy in front of her. Should I just admit that I don't know the answer? Then how can she have any dignity in front of the little guy in the future? Is my question too complicated and stumped the professor? There was no other emotion on Aris' face, and anyone who saw it would only think it was a very innocent inquiry. But to Professor McGonagall, these words were so harsh and even had a hint of irony. But there was nothing he could do but keep a straight face and remain silent. Sensing Professor McGonagall's change of mood, Xianyou's expression changed slightly. He put his hand to his forehead and couldn't help but groan in his heart. Is Aris this guy just young and ignorant, or is he doing it on purpose? Questioning a professor so directly. Does he still want to go to Hogwarts in the future? You know, Professor McGonagall is the deputy headmaster of Hogwarts. If she is really upset, it is not impossible that Aris' admission will be cancelled. Professor McGonagall, please don't be angry. I can assure you that Aris didn't mean any offense, right? Xianyou quickly tried to smooth things over and winked at Aris. Professor McGonagall had mixed feelings, and felt a tightness in his chest. Aris seemed to understand and nodded quickly. I didn't mean to offend you, I just wanted an answer. After he finished speaking, he added in a low voice, if the professor can't answer it, I can give you some time and tell me the answer when you get to school. Aris. Xianyou felt very tired. He looked at the boy speechlessly and made a gesture to shut up. That's enough. Professor McGonagall suddenly looked serious, looked at Aris seriously and said, Kid, being studious is a good thing, this is not your fault. But you shouldn't be so rude to question a school professor. I told you that this question is too profound and not something you should be thinking about at your age. If you really want to know, I promise to give you a satisfactory answer after you enter school. As he spoke, Professor McGonagall reached out and gently patted Aris' shoulder with a serious look on his face. Really? Aris' eyes lit up. Of course, it's true. Professor McGonagall tilted her head, her eyes suddenly evasive. Looking at the curiosity and shining eyes of Aris, she suddenly felt a little guilty. She knew very well that the answer to this question would not be found in a short period of time, and she knew that she was just being perfunctory with the child in front of her. But at this time, in order to maintain his dignity as a professor, Professor McGonagall had no choice but to make the promise. Otherwise, she really didn't know how to end the current situation. Forget it. At worst, I can go back and ask Headmaster Dumbledore for advice. She thought so. Dumbledore should know more than me, right? If it really doesn't work, there are so many books in the school library. There must be a book in there that contains information about the nature of magic. Well, maybe. Professor, I have another question. Just as Professor McGonagall was lost in thought, Aris' voice rang out again. This voice made her heart tighten again. Chapter 11. All right, Aris. Professor McGonagall decisively interrupted the boy and said with an embarrassed look, today's time is limited. If you have any questions about academics, you can ask them when you come to school. She didn't give Aris a chance to ask more questions. Now let me briefly explain the admissions process to you. As he spoke, Professor McGonagall quickly drew out his wand and waved it gently. The acceptance letter from Hogwarts flew out from somewhere and landed in Professor McGonagall's hands. Aris, given your special status, if you need help buying school supplies before school starts, I'd be happy to help. Professor McGonagall, you don't need to bother with this. We can just go with Aris. Little Luna's ethereal voice suddenly sounded, her tone full of eagerness to try. Obviously, she had long wanted to go to Diagon Alley to experience the feeling of school shopping, because she still had to wait a year before she could go to Hogwarts. She also felt a little sorry that Professor McGonagall could not answer Aris's question. But she always felt that some things would be known naturally when the time came, so she was not so persistent. Yes, Professor McGonagall, leave it to us. Xianyo also echoed from the side. At this moment, he finally felt relieved. Just now, he was really afraid that Professor McGonagall would lose his temper and give Aris a good beating on the spot. If that happens, things will not end well. Fortunately, the professors at Hogwarts are as good as their reputation and are very tolerant of students. Well, then, what's next? Professor McGonagall nodded slightly, and then carefully instructed Aris on some preparations that needed to be made before school started. It was as if nothing had happened before, and the atmosphere in the room gradually became harmonious. Aris always had a smile on his face. This smile was not perfunctory, but really happy. Because, just now, the system prompt sound suddenly rang in his mind. Congratulations to the host, the question you raised successfully stumped a professor, and you have obtained 300 academic points. He had never thought before that the daily 3-question task could be played in this way. The question was not answered, but more points were given. This was definitely a bonus. Most importantly, the question he just raised did not disappear because it did not get an answer, but instead became a long-term task. In other words, once this task is completed, he can get another reward. The reward mechanism of this system is really too capricious. Aris's current mood cannot be described as good, it can only be described as very good. This operation is simply like a bug. If this is the case, you can get double the reward for the 3 questions every day as long as you operate properly. That's double the joy. This feeling is simply too happy. Outdoors. Before Professor McGonagall left, he took Zeno aside and asked him some more questions. Aris didn't go over, but he roughly knew what the two talked about. It's just some more detailed information about him. Professor McGonagall should have asked Aris these questions directly, but perhaps considering some other issues. For example, the little boy asked some difficult questions again. Aris could sense that this Hogwarts professor was somewhat, well, how should I put it? He seemed nervous. About 10 minutes later, accompanied by a slight crackling sound, Xianyo walked in from outside the house. Aris knew that Professor McGonagall should have left. So, we're going out today. Zeno looked at Aris and said with a smile, right? Our little wizard. We can't just walk to Diagon Alley. Come on. Having said that, Xianyo did not make any further preparations and walked directly towards the fireplace in the center of the living room. In the wizarding world, the most convenient way to travel is the flow network. As long as you enter the fireplace and think about where you want to go, you can reach your destination quickly. Luna explained to Aris. Aris nodded slightly to show that he understood. He naturally knew the functions of the flow network and the fireplace, otherwise all the movies and novels he watched in his previous life would have been in vain. Come on Aris, remember the key points, and be sure to clearly state the destination you want to go to. Xianyo looked at Luna and nodded in a gesture, I think Luna can show you a demonstration. Little Luna smiled faintly, then grabbed a handful of flow powder from the small bowl next to the fireplace. Diagon Alley. With a flash of green fire, Luna disappeared into the fireplace. Do you understand? Xianyo turned to look at Aris. Yeah. Aris nodded. Then give it a try. Xianyo was still a little worried, and reminded him again, don't be nervous, and be sure to clearly say the name of the place you want to go. Aris nodded again, then stepped into the fireplace and grabbed a handful of flow powder. He naturally knew the consequences of not stating the name clearly, because he clearly remembered that when watching a movie in his previous life, little Harry was nervous and did not state the name clearly, which resulted in him disappearing from the fireplace and appearing directly in Diagon Alley. There may even be more serious consequences. Aris didn't want to show up in a strange wizard's house for no apparent reason. Diagon Alley. Aris calmly uttered 3 words and sprinkled flow powder on the soles of his feet. Then, a ball of green flame rose up. Then he felt his body moving quickly through a dark and narrow passage. Glowing fireplaces kept appearing around him. They were all exits connected to the flow network. However, He had obviously not reached his destination yet, because those exits flashed and disappeared in an instant. Until a ray of light suddenly appeared in front of him, and he felt his body weightless and he was back on solid ground. "Come out quickly, there are people coming out from behind." The familiar voice of little Luna sounded in my ears. Then he felt a small hand grabbing him and pulling him out of the fireplace. It was only then that Aris reacted. He had arrived at his destination. It was my first time using the Flow network to travel, and it felt amazing. Aris savored it for a long time. This is the magical world. To Aris, everything is so new. Welcome to Diagon Alley. Little Luna stood in front of Aris with a smile on her face. The bustling noise flooded into Aris' ears, and a street filled with magical atmosphere appeared before his eyes. Owls kept flying overhead, and wizards and witches in robes kept walking up and down the street, some with pets standing on their shoulders. Many wizards were selling all kinds of magic gadgets and magic snacks that Aris had never seen before on the streets, such as desserts that looked very much like small pumpkin lanterns. There are all kinds of magical shops on both sides of the street. Various magical products or magical creatures are displayed in the huge transparent windows. There were also some magic props placed at the door of the store for the wizards passing by to choose from. Aris heard two wizards discussing the maintenance and cleaning methods of the crucible in front of the magic crucible shop next door. Everything in front of me is so new. A brand new world, the world that Aris had once imagined, appeared before him. Aris smiled and spoke softly. "Nice to meet you. Magic world, here I come." Chapter 12. How do you feel, little guy? Xianyo's voice rang out from behind. "Fortunately, you didn't run to someone else's house, otherwise it would be troublesome." "It feels great." Aris smiled, a happy smile on his face. It was my first time traveling in a magical way, and this new experience was amazing. "Clean it up." Zeno drew his wand and cast a cleansing spell on all three of them. The only downside to using a fireplace to travel is that every time you come out you'll get some ash on your body. This is when a skilled cleansing spell comes in handy. Magic is so convenient. Aris looked at the clothes that had become clean again and said sincerely. "Let's go, we have a lot to buy today." Zeno led the way, calling out to Aris and Luna. "Although asking this may seem a little silly to you, but..." Aris naturally held Luna's hand to prevent the crowded crowd from separating them, and said at the same time, "I don't think I have the money to buy those school supplies now." "Kid, you underestimate your family." Xianyo winked at Aris mysteriously. "As the heir of the Shafik family, you must have inherited a large amount of assets." Luna did not break free from Aris's hand and followed the boy naturally. "I know, but..." Aris frowned slightly. "How can I prove my identity?" He knew that there would be no problem with the identity assigned to him by the system. However, as far as he knew, going to Gringotts to withdraw money required providing a key or something to prove one's identity. For example, Harry Potter has a key to the vault. Even a few years later, when Hermione disguised herself as the notorious Death Eater Bella Black to sneak into Gringotts, she was asked to show her wand to verify her identity, although it was most likely a conspiracy. But according to common sense, those greedy goblins in Gringotts would never hand over the glittering gold coins to an unidentified person. "Don't worry." Xianyo patted Aris's shoulder comfortingly and said, "They will naturally find a way to prove your identity." Hearing this, Aris didn't say anything. However, a hint of curiosity arose in my heart. He searched his mind's memories of watching movies and reading novels in his previous life, and there didn't seem to be any mention of other ways to prove the customer's identity. But soon, he felt relieved. After all, this is not a movie or a novel, but a whole magical world. There are many rules that are not mentioned in the movies and books, waiting for him to explore. Soon, the three of them walked through the crowd and came to a magnificent white building with slightly crooked doorposts. The building has 3 floors in total. Above the door is a carved Gringotts sign. There are also ancient-looking texts engraved on the door. The whole building is located in the middle of a 3-way intersection in Diagon Alley. Coupled with the white architectural style, it is very eye-catching. "We're here." Zeno looked up at the building in front of him, a smile appearing on his face. "Aris, do you know what the words engraved on this door mean?" Aris focused his attention on the door and looked at it carefully. The meaning of these words naturally emerged in my mind. "Come in, stranger, but you must be aware of the consequences of your greed. You will be punished most severely if you only take what you want without earning it." So if you seek to take from our vault a portion of the wealth that was never yours, thief, you have been warned, beware of the consequences that may come instead of treasure. Luna's light voice came from the side, reading the words on the gate. That's right. Xianyo looked at Luna with satisfaction, then turned to look at Aris. What do you feel after reading this? Aris curled her lips slightly, her tone somewhat nonchalant. It looks like these goblins have already regarded the wealth in the underground vault as their own. Speaking of greed, perhaps they are the greediest creatures in the world. Yes, I think so too. Xianyo nodded in agreement. Remember, never underestimate the goblins' obsession with money, otherwise they will definitely strip you of all your wealth. It looks like this trip won't be smooth. Aris muttered softly. Given the goblin's temperament, if he cannot voluntarily show his identity proof, it would be difficult for him to obtain the property left by the Shafik family in Gringotts. Don't worry. Xianyo comforted him, although the fairies are greedy, they dare not ignore the power of the contract. Contract. A hint of doubt rose in Aris's heart again. Xianyo didn't explain any more and took the two of them directly into the white building. Welcome. As soon as they entered Gringotts, a thin goblin came up to them, his eyes wandering between Xianyo and the others. Excuse me, who wants to handle the business? Zeno pulled Aris to his side and patted his shoulder. Mr. Shafik wants to open the vault and take some gold coins. Shafik. The thin goblin's eyes moved slightly, and he looked at Aris with some suspicion. Of course, you may not be able to make the decision on this matter, so please ask your goblin supervisor to come out. Xianyo talked to the skinny goblin calmly, his tone calm. Aris and Luna didn't say anything, just looked around the hall curiously. There are many goblins in Gringotts, and they are all standing behind the counters on both sides of the hall. When Zeno said Mr. Shafik, almost all the fairies who heard the voice nearby looked over with inexplicable expressions in their eyes. Of course, if you're sure. The skinny fairy looked at Aris meaningfully. Of course I can meet your requirements. Having said that, the skinny goblin turned around and walked towards the innermost part of the hall. Zeno gestured to Aris and Luna, then followed the fairy. Their eyes are weird. Luna whispered in Aris' ear. Perhaps, we are considered as liars. Aris shrugged thoughtfully. It seems that what you said before coming in was right. This trip may not be smooth. Luna's face was still calm and her emotions could not be seen. Aris shook his head and said nothing more. Both of them looked towards the innermost part of the hall. There, the skinny goblin said something in the ear of a goblin who looked very old and wore reading glasses. Then, the old fairy looked towards Aris, with a scrutinizing look in his eyes. The pair of reading glasses flashed a strange light under the light. Chapter 13. Are you Mr. Shafik? The old goblin looked at Aris and spoke slowly and seriously. Yes. Aris nodded and said lightly, Aris Shafik. As far as I know, members of the Shafik family have not appeared in the wizarding world for a long time. The old wizard leaned over from behind the counter and stared straight at Aris, his tone revealing a hint of sharpness. So, can you prove your identity? As far as I know, Gringotts should have a way to prove his identity, for example, a blood contract. Xianyo's voice sounded at the right time, continuing the old goblin's words. Of course, some wizard families with noble bloodlines have signed special inheritance contracts in Gringotts. I just thought that if there is a simpler method, it would be great. The old goblin turned his gaze to Xianyo and said in the same slow tone, after all, if a blood test is conducted and it is found that this child is not a descendant of the Shafik family, then the nature of the situation will be completely different. There was a hint of threat in the old goblin's words. Of course I know the consequences. Xianyo's tone became a little stiff, but I am sure that this child is the descendant of the Shafik family. Perhaps, he is the only heir of the Shafik family. If there is no doubt, I think you should arrange a blood test as soon as possible, right? Xianyo had no intention of continuing to argue with the old goblin, so he spoke directly. So, what about you, Mr. Shafik? Seeing that Zeno was firm in his attitude, the old goblin turned his gaze to Aris. Perhaps, he felt that Aris was just a child, and it would be easier to handle him at this time. However, the facts disappointed him. Aris remained calm from beginning to end, without any of the nervousness or awkwardness that an 11-year-old boy would have when he was in trouble. What Mr. Lovegood means is what I mean. He smiled, looking at the old goblin. Of course, I can meet your requirements. A hint of disappointment flashed in the old goblin's eyes, but he quickly changed his tone. However, I still need to remind you that once the results of the blood test show that Mr. Shafik's blood is not in compliance, the Ministry of Magic may send you to Azkaban. The crime of coveting the property of the Holy Wizard bloodline family is not an ordinary punishment. You'd better know this. When the old wizard said the words Mr. Shafik, he deliberately emphasized the tone. By the end, his tone had become extremely stern. That's enough, stop wasting time. Xianyo looked at the old goblin meaningfully, with a hint of displeasure flashing in his eyes. From the very beginning, these fairies may not have believed that Aris was really a member of the Shafik family, so they made things so difficult for him. Xianyo had already noticed this. But even a clay man can get angry, especially in front of children. Xianyo felt very embarrassed. The anger inside me began to rise unconsciously. The old goblin closed the book in front of him that looked like an account book and looked at Xianyo deeply. He turned and walked down the counter, and a faint voice came immediately. In that case, follow me. Having said that, he walked towards the inner part of the hall. Because of his short stature, his steps seemed particularly tight. Zeno nodded towards Aris. Then, the three of them followed the old goblin. Behind them, many fairies saw the tit-for-tat scene between the few people before. After Aris and the others left, a buzzing sound suddenly sounded in the hall. Did you hear that? How dare that kid say he's a descendant of the Shafik family? Impossible, absolutely impossible. The Shafik family has been gone for almost half a century. How could a descendant suddenly appear? I think the magical law enforcement team will be here soon to take them away. You damn liar and thief, wanting to steal the goblin's wealth is simply wishful thinking. Waves of sound spread throughout the hall. Soon, the news that there was a little boy pretending to be a descendant of the Shafik family and trying to defraud the Shafik family's wealth in Gringotts spread like wings out of Gringotts and to the outside world. This news, which has not yet been finalized, has still attracted a lot of attention. All this is because the wealth represented by the surname Shafik is so coveted. On the second floor of Gringotts, in a small reception room. A gorgeous lamp hangs in the center of the reception room, with floating candlesticks and exquisite crystal pendants hanging down. Gringotts is indeed a bank opened by goblins. Not only is the exterior the most gorgeous building in the entire Diagon Alley, the decorations inside also live up to its name and are equally gorgeous. Perhaps this is also related to the characteristics of the fairy race. Their obsession with gorgeous jewel ornaments is no less than that of dragons. Sorry for the long wait, the test results will be out soon. Not long after, Aris and others who were waiting in the reception room saw the old goblin walk in holding a peculiarly shaped golden totem. The totem looked like an ancient book supported by stone pillars carved with blood veins, standing on a high platform. At first glance, it looks like holding a square trophy. This is the blood contract totem. It records the information of all the families that have signed a blood inheritance contract with Gringotts. As long as the boy's blood matches that of any of these families, and he is the only remaining bloodline of that family in the world, he can successfully open one of Gringotts' underground vaults and obtain the right of inheritance. The old fairy looked at Aris with deep eyes and reminded him one last time, if in the end, you fail to arouse the reaction of the blood totem, I promise that the consequences will not be what you want to bear. As he spoke, the old goblin carefully handed the golden totem to Aris. Come on, drop a drop of blood on it. Until this moment, the old goblin still had a look of disdain on his face, and it was obvious that he still did not believe Aris's identity. Aris glanced at Zeno. At this time, Xianyo was obviously a little nervous. Although he was 90% sure that Aris must be from the Shafik family. But at this time, if something happens, the consequences will definitely be very troublesome. Even if he and Aris were not sent to Azkaban, they would probably be detained by the Ministry of Magic law enforcement team for a long time, and even tortured severely. Because the crime of coveting the wealth of the Holy Wizard family is definitely not a small one. Those members of the Holy Family who hold real power in the Ministry of Magic would definitely not mind giving them a hard time. Go ahead. Zeno patted Aris's shoulder and let out a breath. At this point, there was no way they could retreat, otherwise they would be captured by the magical law enforcement team immediately. Compared to Xianyo's nervousness, Aris remained calm from beginning to end. Because he always believes in the power of the system. As Aris dripped a drop of blood onto the golden totem, a strange scene occurred. The golden totem suddenly emitted a golden light, which gradually condensed into the pinion of a family's surname. Soon after, more and more characters appeared, and finally a contract outlined by golden light appeared. This is The old goblin was shocked when he saw this scene, and he became dazed. Chapter 14. I think you have nothing to say now. A smile appeared on Xianyou's face, and all the previous nervousness and uneasiness disappeared at this moment. He naturally knew what was going on from the reaction of the blood totem in front of him. The bloodline contract has reappeared, which means that Aris's bloodline is the purest Shafik family bloodline. He is fully qualified to inherit the wealth of the entire Shafik family. Congratulations Aris, you're going to be very rich soon. At the side, a smile also appeared on Luna's face. She had no specific idea of how much property the Shafik family owned, but she thought it was a considerable amount of assets. Aris was sincerely happy that she was able to pass the blood test. This is a contract reproduction of the highest standard. The old goblin was still in a daze, muttering to himself. He stepped forward cautiously and carefully examined the text of the contract outlined in golden light inside the contract totem. The purest bloodline of the Shafik family, the highest inheritance authority. There are actually direct descendants of the Shafik family in this world. How is this possible? Suddenly, the old goblin turned his head sharply and looked at Aris. Where on earth did you come from? The Shafik family has disappeared for nearly half a century. Why do you suddenly appear now? This doesn't make sense. It must be some kind of conspiracy. The old goblin was so excited that he couldn't help but step forward and wanted to grab Aris' shoulders. But Xianyou would definitely not let him do that, and he moved in front of Aris. Bob Lord, you better know what you're doing. Xianyou said in a low voice with a serious expression, Aris is now your most important customer of Gringotts. Do you still want to do something to him? No, 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 of course not. The old goblin, who was excited for a moment, quickly calmed down and slowly retreated. The information revealed by the blood contract is enough to prove Aris's identity. Moreover, just as the contract came out, the inheritance procedure was completed. Now, Aris is the only legal heir to the Shafik family wealth. As an employee of Gringotts, Bob Rhodes would never dare to offend such a big client. As for ignoring the blood contract and the spirit of the contract, Bob Rod would not dare to do that. That is the foundation of Gringotts in the wizarding world. Without the spirit of contract, Gringotts will no longer be able to gain the trust of wizards and naturally will not be able to survive. Although he is old, his mind is not muddled yet. Dear guest, please follow me. I will bring people to open the door of the vault for you. Although there was still some reluctance in the old goblin's eyes, he could only bow respectfully to Aris, and then left the reception room with a few people. Several people walked out of the reception room and returned to the hall. Then, Bob Rod waved to one side of the hall, and a goblin with a very long nose came over. Grip Hook, come with me and open the treasury of the Shafik family for this most distinguished customer. As soon as these words were spoken, the hall of Gringotts suddenly fell silent. Then, countless pairs of eyes turned to Aris. Aris glanced calmly around the hall, smiled and nodded. He is really the heir of the Shafik family. The blood test passed, how is this possible? What is Bob Lord doing? Has he also been deceived by the nasty liar? The descendants of the Shafik family reappeared in the world. This is too bizarre. There must be something wrong. Noisy discussions soon arose. The fairies sitting behind the counters on both sides of the hall usually looked arrogant and cold, but at this moment, they were all in an uproar. Only they know the extent of the wealth stored by the Shafik family in Gringotts. That is definitely a huge asset that a family can't squander in an entire century. Not only that, even now, the Shafik family's industries are still creating wealth, a huge number every year. If it weren't for the extremely strict contractual restrictions, this huge fortune would have been divided up by countless covetous people many years ago. And now, the heir of the Shafik family has reappeared in the world, which is bound to attract the attention of the entire wizarding world. This is indeed the case. At this time, everything that happened in Gringotts, the news that a member of the Shafik family had reappeared in the world and inherited the entire Shafik family property, had spread like wildfire and spread outside. And it has attracted the attention of many people. Aris didn't care about the discussion of the fairies. He just looked at the goblin named Grip Hook. He was deeply impressed by this goblin because this goblin would have many contacts with Harry and the main characters in the future. We are happy to serve you, distinguished guest. The goblin named Grip Hook bowed to Aris, then looked at Bob Rod and walked straight towards a passage on the left side of the hall. There was the entrance to the underground vault of Gringotts Goblin Bank. After walking through the passage and entering the narrow stone corridor, Aris saw a small railway. He pulled the ring onto a cart parked nearby and then motioned for others to follow. Let's go. Zeno held Aris' shoulders, then took Luna's hand and got on the cart together. As the cart started, a harsh creaking sound suddenly rang out. After the cart had traveled for some distance in the narrow stone corridor, it suddenly dived, and then the scenery in front suddenly changed. An underground lake with dark waves appeared in front of Aris and others. Unknown light sources flicker in this underground world. Above the head are numerous and huge stalactites and stalagmites. Drops of water continuously drip into the underground lake below. The whole space is filled with a wonderful sense of mystery. Dear guest, our journey may take some time, because the more important the vault is, the more stringent our defenses and the farther it is from the ground. Bob Rod was explaining to Aris, and the whistling wind kept blowing past their ears, making it very difficult for them to hear the old goblin's words clearly. Aris kept complaining in his mind. The riding experience of this cart is really terrible. Not only does it look shaky and unsafe, the whole process is like riding a roller coaster, which is so exciting that it is a bit unbearable. Little Luna held Aris's hands tightly, her face was a little pale, and it was obvious that she was very nervous. Yes, although her personality is very ethereal and indifferent, but at this moment, anyone would inevitably have an instinctive fear. It's okay, we'll be there soon. Aris said loudly in the little girl's ear. There's no way. If I don't speak louder, I can't hear it clearly. Griphook stood at the front of the cart, holding a kerosene lamp. After passing a group of stalactites, his eyes suddenly lit up. Everyone hold on tight, we'll be there soon after we pass the small waterfall ahead. Chapter 15. As soon as Griphook finished speaking, everyone heard the sound of running water above their heads, followed by a bone-chilling chill. Everyone on the cart was drenched by the water from the waterfall. This is a cursed anti-thief waterfall that can wash away all disguises. It is one of the defense methods for important areas in the underground vault. Griphook then introduced himself. Zeno cursed under his breath, then quickly pulled out his wand and whispered a spell. The next second, Aris felt a warm current surging around his body. His body became warm again, and the clothes that were wet by the waterfall water were quickly drying. Thank you, Uncle. Aris breathed a sigh of relief and thanked him gratefully. He vowed secretly that he must learn the spell as soon as possible. Otherwise, next time he encounters this situation, he might freeze to death. This is a combination of a cleaning spell and a fire spell. The weather was too humid for a while, and Luna and I couldn't get our clothes dry, so I tried and figured out this spell. Although it's not very powerful, it's quite practical. Xianyo explained when he saw that Aris was very interested in the spell. It's really practical. Aris praised sincerely. While the two were chatting, the cart quickly turned several corners and finally arrived in front of an underground vault that looked much more luxurious than an ordinary vault. We're here. Underground Vault number 719, a luxurious vault belonging exclusively to the Shafik family. The cart slowly stopped, and Griphook was the first to get off the cart, holding a kerosene lamp and coming to the huge round security door of the vault. The huge arch, made of unknown material, looked extremely thick, with a dull matte surface, as if it was made of cast steel. But obviously, this is definitely not as simple as simply making steel. Because Aris could clearly feel that there was an extremely strong magical aura on this door, and it must have been blessed with various protective and safety spells. Mr. Aris, I would like to trouble you to provide a drop of blood. Bob Rod said respectfully to Aris, because the key to the vault has been lost, we can only use a special method to open this door, which involves unlocking the spell of blood magic, so we need your help. No problem. Aris nodded slightly. Seeing this, Griphook stepped forward and took a drop of blood from Aris' finger. Afterwards, the two fairies stood in front of the door of the vault, and their slender fingertips slowly moved across the mysterious patterns on the door, while they whispered unknown spells. At the same time, Aris's drop of blood was dripped onto the gate and was absorbed into the gate bit by bit. Soon, Aris heard a sound like a mechanism turning from inside the door. At the same time, a strange light emanated from the surface of the door. About half a minute later, the noise inside the door gradually stopped. Then, the ground shook slightly. The entire gate began to open slowly to both sides. Xianyo and Aris all widened their eyes and looked into the door curiously. Golden light shines from inside the gate. Aris saw the most spectacular scene since he was born. So many galleons. Luna couldn't help but blurt out. Xianyo looked at the vault filled with gold coins that almost took up the entire vault space, and couldn't help but gasp. The Shafik family's treasury is not small. It should be said that it is much larger than the treasuries of other wizard families. After all, this is the highest level underground vault in Gringotts, which not only represents the highest level of security, but also the highest level of area and value of the vault. The size of the vault is almost 10 times larger than an ordinary vault. But even such a large vault was filled with gold galleons. The visual impact was shocking. I'm afraid I've never seen so many gold coins in my life. Xianyo took a deep breath and said this, with a hint of embarrassment on his face. Although he is the editor-in-chief of the Quibbler magazine, his savings may not even be a fraction of the number of gold coins in this vault, which is really embarrassing. This amazing wealth actually belongs to a child. It is really touching and unbelievable. Mr. Aris, you may go in and get the galleons you need. Bob Rod bowed respectfully to Aris again and gave him a reminder. Yet. Aris nodded and walked into the vault. To be honest, Aris was also extremely uneasy at this moment. The glittering golden vault before him had a powerful impact on him. At this moment, he felt like he was dreaming, as if pie had fallen from the sky and he suddenly possessed such terrifying wealth and assets. If it were someone else, they would probably faint from excitement. But Aris had been mentally prepared, so he remained calm and did not make a fool of himself. He did not go to get the gold coins immediately. After entering the vault, he looked around first. Gold galleons are just the most common items in this vault. There are also many luxury goods and magical products that look extremely precious. These include gorgeous crowns, luxurious necklaces made of priceless jewels, and some magical props exuding a mysterious atmosphere. Aris simply couldn't understand the function and value of these things. After a moment, his eyes rested on a wooden box. In this magnificent vault, the wooden box is very inconspicuous and it is not worthy of being in this vault. But it was precisely because of this that Aris became interested. He walked to the wooden box and hesitated. The sudden appearance of such an ordinary wooden box in this extremely tightly guarded vault is not an ordinary thing at all. He was worried that the wooden box might have been cast with some spell that he couldn't understand. If the spell is triggered, what will happen? He probably doesn't even have a place to reason. However, on second thought, since this wooden box can be placed in the vault, it should be safe. After all, only the descendants of the Shafik family can enter here. The elders of the family shouldn't be so bad as to harm even their own descendants, right? Aris gritted his teeth, no longer hesitated, reached out to take the wooden box, and slowly opened it. Sure enough, after the wooden box was opened, no evil curse was triggered. A very old thread-bound ancient book was lying quietly inside. Compared with the gold galleons filling the vault, this ancient book was still inconspicuous, but it aroused Aris' great interest. A book? Aris murmured curiously, and couldn't help but take the thread-bound ancient book in his hands. Merlin's notes. After seeing the words on the cover of the ancient book clearly, the boy's heart was shocked. This seemingly inconspicuous book is actually the handwritten notes of Merlin, the ancient god of magic? This is too exaggerated, could it be fake? At this moment, countless thoughts flashed through Aris's mind. But in the end, he still solemnly and carefully placed the ancient book in his arms. Regardless of whether this note is true or not, he needs to take a good look at it. The value of this ancient book can be imagined as it can be placed in the Shafik family vault with such a high security level. Maybe the content of this book is really related to Merlin. First, I merged Merlin's talent card from the system, and now I got an ancient book similar to Merlin's notes. This is all just too much of a coincidence. Thinking of this, Aris' heart couldn't help but become hot. Chapter 16. Soon, Aris took out some more gold galleons and walked out of the vault. Those gold galleons were put in a cloth bag, and it was estimated that there were probably thousands of them. However, compared with the vault filled with gold galleons, these are probably not even a drop in the bucket. Aris now truly understands what it means that money is just a number. With so many gold galleons, even if he did nothing in his life and lived a luxurious life every day, he would never be able to squander them all. The amount of money has no meaning to him. How does it feel to be a rich man? As soon as Luna walked out of the vault door, she winked at Aris and asked in the same casual and ethereal tone. To be honest, I don't feel anything. Aris smiled and added, but I don't have to worry about money anymore. Come to think of it, it's a good thing. The two smiled at each other and did not continue the topic. On the side, Xianyo saw Aris's expression and nodded slightly. He had previously worried that Aris might lose himself because of this sudden wealth. Now it seems that he was thinking too much. The boy in front of me cannot be viewed with common sense. In fact, he is much calmer and more outstanding than many adult wizards. Now that we have the money, let's not waste time and go buy the things we need for school. Xianyo said, we have already wasted too much time. As he said this, he glanced at the two goblins inconspicuously. Seeing Xianyo's meaningful eyes, Griphook was fine, but Bobrod lowered his head silently. Obviously, he still felt a little bit scared about the previous incident that had made things difficult for Aris. The group got back on the cart and returned to the main hall of Gringotts along the same route. After going through the normal procedures, Aris got a vault key from the fairy again. Next time he comes to the vault, he won't have to bleed to open it. Walking out of Gringotts, Aris felt as if he was in another world. In a short period of time, he went from having nothing to becoming one of the richest men in the wizarding world. This feeling was truly amazing. It's very unreal and feels like a dream. Let's go. I'll buy you some teaching supplies you'll need for school, like a crucible, a quill, etc. Xianyo skillfully arranged the next plan. As for the two of you, you can go to Madame Malkin's robe shop and pick out some clothes suitable for wearing to school. Then, we will meet at Ollivander's wand shop to choose a wand for Aris. This is the most important thing. You two little ones, any other suggestions? Aris and Luna looked at each other and shook their heads. In that case, let's take action. As he spoke, Zeno pushed his way through the crowd and headed towards a shop selling cauldrons and potion ingredients. Let's go too. Aris naturally took Luna's hand. While the other party was still a little confused, he had already pulled the girl into Madame Malkin's robe store nearby. In the next half hour, Luna carefully selected several sets of clothes for Aris, including the Hogwarts standard robes and matching lingerie. It has to be said that little Luna's taste in choosing clothes is extremely unique, which left Aris a little dumbfounded. Luna, I think this black robe with the floral lining looks pretty good, what do you think, Aris? Aris, yeah, it's nice, but I'd probably go with this black and white blouse. Luna, this bright red robe is also nice, it sets off your long silver hair perfectly. Aris, Luna, I think dark red would be better. Luna, what about this? Blue pants with a purple top. You can wear it on ordinary days. Aris, isn't that a bit too fancy? Although she was rejected by Aris many times, Luna was still very interested and carefully selected the boys around her with a nonchalant tone and actions. If we ignore the girl's aesthetic taste, Aris should be very touched by this patience. On the side, Madame Malkin, who had been watching the two of them choosing, was very diligent. She would only cover her mouth and chuckle when she really couldn't help it. Nor did he disturb the happy time that the two golden boy and girl were spending together. However, after a long time, Aris finally couldn't help it. After hurriedly putting together a few sets of clothes, she pulled the still excited Luna out of Madame Malkin's store. The figure, viewed from behind, looked somewhat disheveled. When the two walked out of the store, Aris was sure that he heard Madame Malkin's cheerful laughter. This also gave him a new understanding of Luna's fashion sense. Let's go, it's time to go to Ollivander's wand shop. Luna was obviously in a good mood, and she walked with a brisk and cheerful pace. Well, let's go. Uncle Zeno should be waiting for us. Aris raised his head and looked forward. The wand shop was not far from Madame Malkin's robe shop. The shop sign was very old and had a strong sense of age, making it very easy to recognize. Wait, I think I saw my father. At this time, Luna turned her head and looked in another direction. Hearing this, Aris turned around and saw a lot of people gathered in front of Flourish and Blot's bookstore. There were also faint cheers coming through the street to their ears. It seems like there's an event going on there. Aris also became interested. He saw Xianyo standing in the crowd outside Flourish and Blot's bookstore, watching the excitement with interest. Father is so unreliable. We agreed to meet at Ollivander's. Luna seemed a little dissatisfied and curled her lips slightly. The girl rarely shows such an expression. Most of the time, she looks calm and composed. She only behaves like this occasionally in front of her family. Aris smiled, took the girl's hand and walked towards Flourish and Blot's bookstore. Don't worry, let's go and see the excitement. The two of them quickly came to the outside of the crowd, and shouts from inside were heard immediately. Flourish and Blot's bookstore is holding a back-to-school promotion. As long as you have the ability, you can get free teaching materials from the bookstore, and you can also get more surprise rewards. Little wizards, Come and show your skills. A staff member of the bookstore stood on a makeshift small stage, shouting hard at the wizards passing by. In the activity area next to the stage, some little wizards were already taking on challenges. There were many onlookers around, and cheers could be heard from time to time. Aris stood on tiptoe and looked into the crowd, and unexpectedly saw a familiar figure. It was a girl with long, wavy brown hair in a fluffy style. Her clothes were different from the common clothes in the wizarding world and more like those in the Muggle world. When he saw the girl, a name naturally appeared in Aris's mind. Hermione Granger. Chapter 17. Aris really didn't expect that he would meet one of the future protagonists of this world today. The legendary Miss Know-It-All. At this time, Hermione Granger was challenging the event project of Flourish and Blots. Recite an article of more than 1,000 words in 10 minutes. As long as you succeed, you can get a set of free teaching materials provided by Flourish and Blots bookstore. This challenge is very difficult. To recite 1,000 words in 10 minutes without making any mistakes, perhaps only a gifted student can do it. It is estimated that Flourish and Blots bookstore originally just used this as a gimmick to increase its own popularity. I guess even they didn't expect that the event would be so successful that someone would actually come to challenge it. Hermione Granger was known as Miss Know-It-All at Hogwarts. She was a top student at school, and at the entrance ceremony, she was selected into Gryffindor House, which was enough to prove that she was very keen on challenging things. So it's not surprising that she appears here at this time. This event seems interesting, Aris, why don't you join us? Luna's voice came to my ear. Aris glanced at Miss Know-It-All surrounded by the crowd and smiled thoughtfully. It's really interesting, and if you pass the challenge, you can get the whole set of teaching materials. It sounds like a great deal. Do you really want to try it? Xianyo had already come to the two of them at this time with a smile on his face. In his opinion, this challenge was obviously too difficult for an 11-year-old child. But if Aris is really willing to take the challenge, he will definitely agree with it. It doesn't matter if you fail the challenge. I won't laugh at you. Luna winked at Aris. Who said I would fail? Aris smiled and said confidently, I just think that this difficulty is still too low. Luna, do you want to have some fun with them? The girl's eyes lit up, do you want to increase the difficulty? Smart Luna guessed Aris's thoughts instantly. Why not? Aris also winked at the girl. Then, he walked towards the activity area. At this moment, a louder cheer suddenly came from the front. Oh my god, such an amazing memory, I can't believe a little girl can achieve this level. Without any spells, relying only on my memory, in just 10 minutes, it's simply genius. Today we will all remember a name, that is Hermione Granger. She successfully completed the challenge event of Flourish and Blots bookstore and will receive a generous reward. Amazing ability, even more magical than magic. In just 10 minutes, I memorized an article of more than 1,300 characters. It's amazing. Aris looked ahead and saw Hermione standing up from the crowd with a bright yet somewhat shy smile on her face. Apparently, she had just completed the challenge at Flourish and Blots. Among ordinary people, this is already very impressive, and she is worthy of being called Miss Know-It-All. The reputation of being a top student is well deserved. Soon, a clerk from Flourish and Blots bookstore came up to the girl and said with a smile, Congratulations, Miss Hermione Granger. You will receive a complete set of Hogwarts textbooks from Flourish and Blots bookstore. If you have already purchased the textbooks in advance, we can also exchange them for other books of equal value. Thank you. Miss Know-It-All was obviously a little excited, with a lovely blush on her face. Just as Aris was standing aside and watching the show with great interest, a voice suddenly sounded behind him. Sir, do you also want to participate in the challenge? Aris turned around and saw another clerk from Flourish and Blots standing behind him. Of course, if possible. Aris nodded politely. In fact, he had not originally thought about taking the limelight, but since Luna wanted him to participate, it would be okay to just play around. With the photographic memory and super speed reading talents rewarded by the system, it would be no problem to memorize 1,000 words in 10 minutes, let alone an entire book. As long as the book can be read in 10 minutes. Of course, I'm sure you already know the rules. Very clear. Then I'll arrange it for you right away. Wait. Aris stopped the clerk who was about to prepare, and said with a smile, Actually, I think your difficulty is a bit low. What? The clerk looked a little confused, not knowing whether he didn't hear clearly or was not sure. What I mean is, if I take the initiative to increase the difficulty, can I increase the reward appropriately as well? Aris still had a smile on his face. This time, the clerk finally reacted. How difficult would you like to raise the difficulty? How about 10 minutes to memorize a book? Aris casually picked up a book from the table beside him. It was not too thin, but not too thick either, and could be read within 10 minutes at least. He waved it at the clerk. In 10 minutes, you have to memorize a book. The clerk was obviously shocked, or perhaps he didn't expect Aris to do such a thing, and his face was very interesting. At the same time, the onlookers around also noticed the movement here. Even Hermione Granger, who was about to collect her reward, stopped and looked towards Aris. Sir, you are joking. The clerk looked at Aris with some embarrassment and kindly reminded him, if you are really that confident, I suggest you follow our rules. This way you have a better chance of getting a reward. Many people around laughed, thinking that Aris had been stimulated by something or was just a child playing around, and they didn't take it seriously at all. Memorizing a book in 10 minutes, considering the thickness of the book, it must contain at least 10,000 words. This is an absolutely impossible challenge. Perhaps, this little guy is expecting a miracle to happen. Little guy, I admire your courage, but it's a pity that this kind of thing can't be accomplished just by courage. Go home quickly. Ha ha ha. Doubts and even friendly teasing were heard from all around. No one believed that Aris could complete the challenge of memorizing a book in 10 minutes. He looked at the crowd around him who were watching the show, then looked at Luna in the crowd, and the smile on his face became even more intense. When he turned around and looked at the clerk again, his expression had become firm, and he said in a tone that could not be refused, I want to give it a try, maybe, I can do it. Of course, if you insist, but the reward. The clerk was about to say that the reward would not change, but was interrupted by a voice before he could say it. If you can complete this impossible challenge, you can choose any book from Flourish and Blots today, with no limit. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice and saw a middle-aged man with a goatee and a bowler hat, smiling at Aris. Of course, the prerequisite is that you have to carry the books back yourself, the middle-aged man added. Seeing the man appear, the two clerks of Flourish and Blots bookstore saluted and called him, Manager. This is the manager of Flourish and Blots bookstore. Aris silently looked at the middle-aged man with a goatee, curious in his heart. It seemed that in the Harry Potter series he had read in his previous life, whether it was the movies or the novels, there was no detailed introduction to the mysterious manager of Flourish and Blots bookstore. So, this is what he looks like. Please give me votes for the flowers, please. Chapter 18. Thank you for your generosity, dear store manager. Aris nodded slightly to the middle-aged man, then continued with a smile, now that we have reached an agreement, I think the challenge can begin. Of course, we can start anytime. The middle-aged store manager nodded to the two clerks from Flourish and Blots. Hearing that Aris was really going to challenge himself to recite a whole book within 10 minutes, the wizards watching around became interested and started discussing it in low voices with looks of watching a good show. Further away, more wizards heard the noise from here and were gathering here. The entrance of Blooms and Blots bookstore was already packed with people. You have more courage than I do, good luck to you. Just as Aris sat down on the stool reserved for challengers, Hermione Granger, who had not left yet, spoke in a low voice with a look of wishing for the best on her face. Apparently, Miss Know-It-All didn't believe Aris could complete the challenge either. In fact, no one present thought Aris could do it. Otherwise, the manager of Bloomingdale's would never offer such a generous reward. He simply wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to make the event better, get more people involved, and thereby increase the influence of the bookstore. In everyone's opinion, this is just a good show for fun. Even Zeno did not expect Aris to perform a miracle. Having this courage is already commendable. The result is not important. Zeno said this while holding Luna's shoulders to prevent the girl from being squeezed away by the crowd. Maybe he can do it. If there was anyone on the field who still believed in Aris, Luna might be the only one. She herself didn't know why she had such an idea. But her intuition told her that Aris would not make such a big fuss for no reason, and in her opinion, this boy was not the kind of person who liked to attract attention. In short, she has a blind confidence in boys. Up ahead, the voice of the manager of Flourish and Blots bookstore sounded again. If you are ready, I will declare the timer begin. He will personally take part in this challenge and be responsible for supervising and hosting the entire process. Also, as a friendly reminder, our rule is that no magic or potions may be used during the event, including but not limited to memory enhancement spells, sobering potions, and felicity potions, etc. If you break the rules, we will cancel your qualification to participate in the challenge and all the results you have obtained. The middle-aged store manager solemnly reiterated the challenge rules to Aris. Understood. Aris nodded. The store manager looked at him meaningfully, then took out a somewhat old book. This book was not the one Aris had picked up earlier, but a relatively obscure book that perhaps most people present had not read. The title of the book was The Mysterious Shafik Family. This is a family history book, which is rarely popular in the market. It is very likely that it is just the store manager's personal collection. Of course, the thickness of this book is about the same as the book Aris picked up earlier. In other words, the total number of words in the two books was similar, and he didn't mean to do anything tricky. His purpose might be to be on the safe side, fearing that Aris had memorized the previous book in advance. When Aris saw the book in the store manager's hand, his eyes moved slightly. Coincidence? Or intentional? The store manager actually picked out a book about the Shafik family for him to recite. Are you ready? Before Aris could think about it, the manager's voice sounded again. He could only suppress the doubts in his heart and nodded gently, we can start anytime. Then I declare. The middle-aged store manager placed the mysterious Shafik family in front of Aris, dragged out the words for a while, and then continued, the ultimate challenge of the special promotion event of the back-to-school season at Flourish and Blott's bookstore. Start now. As the store manager's voice fell, a beam of magical light shot out from his wand. A green light formed a 10-minute countdown above the challenge area. This also means that the challenge has officially begun. Aris glanced at the countdown above his head and nodded in admiration. Another interesting magic. This world is so interesting. The next second, he looked at the book in front of him and opened the first page. The glory of the past is engraved in the noble blood, and the name of Shafik will never fall. This book tells the long-standing heritage of the Shafik family, as well as many wonderful or shocking achievements. After reading just the beginning, Aris' attention was completely immersed in the book. He only had a vague understanding of the Shafik family, but he knew without thinking that to be one of the 28 sacred families, this family must have had its peak and glory in the past. This is the best opportunity for Aris to understand this family. Time passes by little by little. Aris turned the pages faster and faster. The talents of super speed reading and photographic memory were brought to their full potential at this moment. With Aris's full devotion, every word in the book seemed to come alive, jumping out of the book and being deeply engraved in his mind. The originally noisy crowd had become quiet without anyone noticing. Everyone subconsciously held their breath and did not disturb the boy who was concentrating on memorizing the book. The same is true for the middle-aged manager of Flourish and Blott's bookstore. The difference was that his eyes now flashed with a thoughtful look. Seems to be thinking about something. 5 minutes passed. Aris flipped through the book faster and faster. At this time, he was turning the pages of the book almost without any pause. He glanced at it and then turned to the next page. This scene left the surrounding wizards puzzled. Whispered discussions began to arise again. What on earth is this kid doing? He's flipping through the pages so fast that I can't even see the words on the pages clearly. Is he really memorizing the contents? Perhaps, he just wants to end this challenge as soon as possible. As for the contents of the book, even if he reads it carefully, I'm afraid it's impossible for him to finish reading it all in just 10 minutes, let alone remember it. Just as expected, this challenge is a farce. The time is almost up. I hope the little guy can be strong enough to face his failure. As the surrounding wizards discussed, the countdown lit by magical light was drawing to a close. Hermione Granger glanced at Aris flipping through the book and shook her head slightly. She was sure that at the speed the boy was flipping through the book, he couldn't even see the words clearly, let alone remember them. The result was obvious and there was no suspense. Time's up. As the magic countdown light dissipated into the air, the middle-aged store manager's voice sounded again. At this moment, Aris just turned to the last page of the book. He raised his head, smiled and closed the book. Chapter 19. Little guy, are you ready? The middle-aged store manager looked at Aris and spoke with a smile. Yeah. Aris rubbed his temple and nodded slightly. Well then, we are about to start the second part of the challenge. The store manager picked up the book The Mysterious Shafik Family on the table and opened the first page. Please start reciting. At this moment, the field became quiet again. The entire street seemed to have been paused, and everyone's eyes were focused on Aris. Except for the occasional faint noise coming from the end of the street farther away, there was no other sound. Aris closed his eyes slightly, and words kept emerging in his mind. When he opened his eyes again, a confident smile appeared on his face again. This book is about the history of the Shafik family, one of the 28 holy families. From dozens of centuries ago to the present, all the glory and achievements of the family are recorded in this book. Next, here is the main text: the glory of the past is engraved in the noble blood, and the name of Shafik will never fall. As Aris began to recite, the middle-aged store manager's expression became serious. He opened the book, his eyes wandering among the pages, comparing them carefully. The ancestors of the Shafik family came to Egypt in the 7th century with the Arab occupation of Egypt, and gradually developed and prospered here until the Ottoman Empire attacked Egypt in the 16th century. During the protracted war, a branch of the family went north to Britain, far away from the Ottoman Empire, and took root there. They began to take root in this land and multiply, another glorious chapter for the family. In the 1930s, Cantankerous not added it to the list when he compiled the Pure Blood list, and from then on, the family gradually reached another peak. As Aris recited, the entire street fell silent. The expressions of the surrounding wizards gradually became surprised, and the tense atmosphere even caused the surrounding space to begin to continuously generate waves of abnormal magical fluctuations, and the scene suddenly became extremely weird. 10 minutes later, the manager of Flourish and Blots, the middle-aged man with a goatee and a bowler hat, had already turned his eyes away from the books and instead stared blankly at the boy who was still reciting incessantly. They are the creators and maintainers of the Flow Network. They are the recorders of wizarding history. They stand on the long river of time, traveling through time and space. Hermione Granger's mouth opened wide, and her eyes were filled with disbelief and shock. In the crowd, Sienyo's expression had also become dull. Only Luna, still with a nonchalant smile, quietly looked at the boy in the middle of the crowd, who was surrounded by countless people but remained calm and composed, as if he was glowing. The seeds of worship quietly take root and sprout in my heart. They created the time magic that is called taboo by the wizarding world, and hit at the keynotes of every major historical event, observing the direction of history and maintaining the balance of the wizarding world. 15 minutes later, Aris' tone suddenly paused. Just when everyone thought that the recitation would end here and that this was the limit of the boy's memory, Aris slowly picked up the tea prepared for him by the bookstore clerk from the table next to him and took a sip. Then, he spoke again. The recitation continues. In the following time, the street in front of Flourish and Blots bookstore has become Aris's personal show stage. He recited fluently and naturally without any pause. At this moment, no one questioned his ability to remember. Even if he stopped here, it would be enough to gain everyone's respect and admiration. From the beginning till now, Aris has memorized more than 5,000 words, far exceeding the challenge number set by Flourish and Blots at the beginning, and all of this was completed under the supervision of countless wizards throughout the street. There is absolutely no possibility of cheating. When Aris recited more than 10,000 words, the middle-aged store manager took a deep breath. That's all. The middle-aged store manager spoke with a complicated expression and called out to the boy who was still walking without any pause and with a confident look on his face. There was no need to continue. No matter what, Aris has created a record that no one can surpass. It can even be said that he made history by becoming the first person to propose the ultimate challenge and successfully complete it since Flourish and Blots bookstore founded this event. The most important thing is that he is just a little wizard who has just turned 11 and has not yet entered Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. The talent and ability he has demonstrated at this time are enough to make all the adult wizards present feel ashamed. Good job, little guy. Following an exclamation, warm applause broke out at the scene. Aris was among the crowd, neither arrogant nor impatient, with a calm and composed smile still on his face, as if he had just done something insignificant. I'm afraid the wizarding world is about to produce another extraordinary figure. I have reason to believe that this little guy's future achievements will definitely be comparable to the top wizard scholars of this era. Even the greatest white wizard at Hogwarts probably couldn't have done better than this boy when he was a child. I should apologize to you for my earlier stupidity, kid. I shouldn't have doubted your talent and ability. Flourish and Blots bookstore has done a good thing this time. We have witnessed the birth of a miracle. What I want to know more is, which family does this little guy come from? To have such outstanding talents and abilities, I think he must have been born extraordinary. One after another, voices tinged with excitement and a hint of inquiry were heard. Aris glanced at the crowd and didn't say much. He just smiled and then turned his gaze to the middle-aged manager of Flourish and Blott's bookstore. Well, Mr. Manager, I think I have completed the challenge, right? Of course. The middle-aged store manager nodded repeatedly with a wry smile on his face. When Aris proposed the ultimate challenge, he never thought the final result would be like this. Excuse me, child, but could you tell me your name? The middle-aged store manager's tone was inquiring, and at the same time he had some doubts in his heart, as if he was trying to verify something. Of course. Aris nodded. My name is Aris, Aris Shafik. As soon as the boy said this, the noise at the scene suddenly stopped again. Then everyone's eyes were focused on Aris again, and many people's expressions became extremely interesting. Surprise, confusion, and very strange astonishment and indignation. Chapter 20. Everyone looked at Aris and the middle-aged man, the manager of Flourish and Blots, with suspicion. Shafik. Aris Shafik. Could this boy be a descendant of the Shafik family? Merlin's beard, the rumors are true, Shafik's descendants have really appeared again. No wonder he knows the contents of the book by heart. What a genius! I'm afraid all this is a planned show. He may have memorized the contents of the book by heart. I have reason to suspect that this guy must have colluded with Flourish and Blott's bookstore to stage such a ridiculous farce. The atmosphere on the scene changed again and again. Everyone's eyes were once again focused on Aris and the middle-aged store manager, waiting for an explanation from the two. The crowd, which had originally quieted down, became noisy again. What happened? Why did these people suddenly become so strange? Hermione Granger obviously hadn't realized what was happening yet. But when she thought about it carefully, her expression changed and surprise appeared on her face. Shafik. This boy's last name is Shafik. That seems to be the family mentioned in the book just now. He is the descendant of that mysterious family. Miss Know-It-All, who had come to her senses, looked at Aris, and her heart could not calm down for a long time. It felt like suddenly seeing the characters in the novel in real life, which was very magical. At this time, the manager of Flourish and Blott's bookstore quickly came to Aris and grabbed his hand. He looked very strange, with a hint of disbelief in his excitement. Let him go. At this time, Xianyo finally couldn't stand it anymore, and walked over with Luna. He pulled Aris over and blocked him behind him. I can guarantee that he definitely didn't cheat. I will give you an explanation for this matter. He thought that the store manager wanted to cause trouble because of Aris's identity. No, I think you misunderstood. Little guy, no, Mr. Shafik, can we talk for a minute? It's best to find a quiet place. The store manager took a step back, somewhat at a loss, and looked at the boy who was blocked behind Xianyo with a sincere look. The noise around was getting louder and louder. The wizards who were watching were obviously not satisfied with the middle-aged store manager's behavior. They began to question him, and many even started to curse him. They accused Flourish and Blots and Aris of being scammers and felt that this was an elaborate farce. It was a serious waste of their time and emotions. Aris didn't care about what the wizards around him said. He felt at ease anyway. The worst that could happen was that he would just change a book and recite it again, and the result would be the same. But he also felt a little strange at this time. The store manager's reaction at this time was obviously wrong, and there seemed to be some hidden story. He thought about it for a moment, then nodded and said, "No problem, we can talk." "Thank you." The middle-aged store manager bowed to Aris gratefully, and then spoke again, "Please wait a moment, sir, I will take care of things here first." After he finished speaking, he stood up and turned to the surrounding wizards, pointed his wand at his throat and cast an amplification spell, and then a huge sound suddenly spread throughout the street. Quiet. This huge sound caused the surrounding voices to suddenly stagnate, and everyone looked at the middle-aged store manager. "I'm sorry, today's event at Flourish and Blott's bookstore has come to an end. Next, our staff will give a discount card to everyone who has participated in this event. With this discount card, you can get a 20% discount on your next purchase at the bookstore. Thank you all for your support, may Merlin's light shine upon you." After he finished speaking, the middle-aged store manager winked at the shop assistants behind him. The two shop assistants reacted immediately, quickly took out a large stack of discount cards from their pockets, and walked towards the crowd of onlookers. At this point, the angry crowd calmed down a little and turned their attention to the two store clerks. Taking this opportunity, the store manager immediately separated the crowd and made a gesture of invitation to Aris and the others. "Please follow me, there is a quiet storage room inside the bookstore." Xianyo looked at Aris for a moment, and when he saw the boy nod, he relaxed and led the two of them into the bookstore. "Also, Miss Granger, please come along as well. I will give you your reward." The store manager suddenly turned around and looked at Miss Know-It-All, who was still a little confused. "Oh well." Hermione nodded quickly and quickly followed the others. She had always been very curious about Aris, and now she had the chance to follow him in and see what was going on, which was exactly what she wanted. Inside Flourish and Blots, the shelves are filled with new and old books of all kinds. These books don't seem to be deliberately classified, but some of the more popular books, such as the textbooks that Hogwarts students need to purchase this year, are placed in the most conspicuous places. The entire bookstore, even the aisles, are filled with books, making it look a bit messy. "Aris, something seems strange to me." Luna came from behind Zeno to Aris' side at some point and spoke in a low voice. "You noticed it too?" Aris was not surprised at all that this clever little girl could see some abnormalities in the store manager. Although she was young, intelligence was not limited by age. "He seemed really excited when he heard your name." Little Luna spoke of her discovery in that unique way, seemingly nonchalantly. "Maybe it's because of the last name Shafik." Although Aris hadn't figured out the reason yet, apart from the system, this last name was the only thing on him that could arouse other people's interest. Just now, he quickly scanned the books in Flourish and Blots, but found that the book The Mysterious Shafik Family was not sold in the store, which meant that book might really be the store manager's collection. The person who collects this book might have some connection with the Shafik family. At least that's what he thought. "As for the specific situation, I will have to talk to the store manager to find out." "What are you two little guys whispering about?" Xianyo's voice suddenly came from behind. At this time, they just walked up the stairs leading to the second floor in the bookstore. Behind Xianyo is dear Miss Know-It-All. "Nothing," Aris and Luna said in unison. Obviously, they didn't want to make Xianyo too worried before talking to the store manager. As for her safety issues, this is Diagon Alley. If the store manager really wants to do something bad to them, or has other intentions, the Aurors and Strikers from the Ministry of Magic will be able to get here within 2 minutes. Except for the darkest period when you know who was rampant, no one dared to cause trouble in Diagon Alley. If we really want to do something shameful, it will definitely be in Diagon Alley. That is where all kinds of people of unknown identities gather. Besides, Uncle Xianyo is here. Although his strength may not be comparable to that of an Auror, he is still an adult wizard and has some fighting ability. He is not completely defenseless in front of the store manager. Chapter 21. "Hey, your name is Aris, right?" After they went up to the second floor, the space finally became more spacious. Hermione Granger finally caught up with them and came to Aris and asked with great interest. "Yeah, that's right, Aris Shafik." "Hello, my name is Hermione, Hermione Granger." "I know." Aris shrugged and said teasingly, "By the time you complete the bookstore challenge, everyone on the street should know your name." "I was just lucky." The little girl blushed in embarrassment. "Hello, I'm Luna, Luna Lovegood." Seeing Hermione looking at her, little Luna nodded slightly, introduced herself seriously, and pointed at Zeno. "This is my father." "Hello, smart girl." Zeno smiled in a self-proclaimed gentlemanly manner and nodded to Hermione. "Hello, Mr. Lovegood." After the few people finished introducing themselves, the voice of the manager of Blooming Bookstore came again. "Please come in, this is the bookstore's storage room. Although it's a bit crowded, it's still quiet." Aris looked into the storage room. Except for a space in the middle where a few chairs and a table were placed, the rest of the room was filled with books. The store manager went into the storeroom first, and Aris just heard the sound of things being moved inside. Obviously, this piece of open space had just been cleared. Several people entered the storage room, but when Hermione Granger wanted to follow in, she was stopped by the store manager. "My dear little girl, your rewards are all here. Please take them and leave first." The store manager pointed to a pile of books in the storage room. "Can't I listen to what you guys talk about?" Hermione was extremely curious at the moment and naturally didn't want to leave. "Indeed. The store manager wanted to continue to drive people away. However, Aris' voice came from the storage room, "Mr. Manager, there's no need to be so troublesome. If you have anything to say, just say it." Aris is now becoming more and more curious about the store manager. His sudden change of attitude and the politeness he showed at this time were completely out of character. Now they want to drive Miss Know-It-all away. What on earth do they want to do? He's not trying to cheat and doesn't want me to empty out his bookstore, right? Aris suddenly had a strange thought. If he was really allowed to move the books in the bookstore, he would have many ways to make Flourish and Blots go bankrupt. Of course, this is just a joke. Of course Aris couldn't really do that. "Sir, my name is Henry Barton." The middle-aged store manager thought about it and gave up his previous idea and no longer blocked Hermione from entering the storage room. After he invited several people to sit down, he suddenly bowed to Aris and said, "Members of the Barton family have been servants of the Shafik family for generations." "Sir." "No, I should change my name." "Master, we have waited for nearly half a century, and finally we see the descendants of the Shafik family again. When the news came out from Gringotts that a little boy had inherited the Shafik family's fortune, I wondered when I could see the master again. I didn't expect that day to come so soon. We were originally planning to come find you sometime." As he spoke, Henry suddenly stretched out his hand and wiped his already red eyes. "I'm sorry, Master. I'm just too excited." The scene before him made Aris a little confused. "Henry Barton? The whole family are Shafik's servants? I'm only 11 years old. How come he suddenly became the master?" At the side, Luna and the others were also surprised, especially Hermione, whose expression was even more interesting. This person is actually Aris's servant. They never imagined that things would turn out so suddenly. Aris hurried forward and helped Henry, who was still bowing and hadn't stood up, while quickly sorting out his thoughts. "Mr. Barton, right? Master, you can just call me Henry." "Wait, don't call me Master." Aris didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "This makes me feel like I've aged dozens of years in an instant. This feeling is so weird." "This." Henry hesitated for a moment, then asked tentatively, "How about I call you Master?" Aris originally wanted to refuse. He was really not used to this wealthy family-style address. But when he saw the persistence in Henry's eyes, he finally nodded, "Whatever you want." "Master, it's great that you can come back. You don't know that after the masters left, the whole family seemed to have lost its backbone. More and more people began to set their sights on the family's various businesses. If you don't come back..." "Wait." Aris frowned, sounding somewhat puzzled. "You mean, to this day, the Shafik family still has a lot of businesses outside?" "Of course." Henry nodded affirmatively. Although the previous generation of masters have disappeared for nearly half a century, all members of the Barton family have kept their mission in mind and have been protecting the Shafik family's property. Just like this Flourish and Blots bookstore, it can still bring a lot of wealth to the family every month. At this point, Henry's face showed a hint of pride, and the two goatees at the corners of his mouth curled up. Aris found that look unexpectedly cute. "I certainly didn't expect." Aris murmured softly, feeling that everything happened too suddenly. "Just come to the bookstore to buy a few books, and suddenly find that the bookstore belongs to you? And suddenly I found that I still had many servants. The most bizarre thing is that even though the other members of the family have disappeared for nearly half a century, there are still such loyal servants guarding the property belonging to the Shafik family." Aris felt that he might need some time to digest all this. All this is so unexpected. Not only Aris was confused, Xianyo and the others also had faces full of surprise and shock. When Aris showed his extraordinary memory before, Xianyo was already very surprised. At this moment, Henry's identity was beyond his expectation. He had a feeling that there might be more surprising things happening to Aris. What kind of person is he? Hermione Granger stared blankly at the boy sitting on the other side of the table, feeling that the development of things was as magical as magic. The boy was obviously about the same age as her, but he surprised her time and time again. First, recite an entire book in 10 minutes. After seeing what happened just now, she naturally no longer thought that Aris's participation in the Ultimate Challenge event was a collusion with the bookstore, and she would not even have that thought again. "I just listened to the conversation between Henry and Aris. They really didn't know each other at the beginning, so there was no possibility of collusion. The result, then, is obvious. He really has a memory ability that feels like a cheat. Especially since she had participated in the challenge of Flourish and Blots, she could feel the horror of Aris' memory more clearly. To her, that was simply incredible. Then there is the identity of this boy. Although they had only known each other for a short time, Hermione could probably guess that Aris's identity was not simple. Whether it is from what is written in the book The Mysterious Shafik Family or from the few words heard from the crowd, it can be inferred that the surname Shafik represents extremely huge wealth. She was even more surprised after Henry revealed his identity. What kind of power can make an entire family willingly and selflessly contribute to another family? In particular, members of the Shafik family have disappeared for half a century and have not appeared since. Such loyalty can probably only be found in legendary stories. Miss Granger felt that the boy was a mystery. There seems to be a kind of magic that makes people constantly want to explore the secrets of him. Chapter 22. Young man, when are you going to return to the Shafik mansion? At that time, I will summon all members of the Barton family to come and meet you. After Aris had a bit of time to digest the information he had given, Henry spoke again, his tone respectful. Old house. Aris was a little confused. Of course, you don't think that the Shafik family doesn't even have a decent house. We have carefully maintained the old house over the years, and the facilities inside have always been complete, just waiting for you to come back. At this point, a smile appeared on Henry's face, as if he had seen Aris returning to the old house to meet other members of the Barton family, and everyone's delighted expressions. There's no rush for this. I need to think about it. Aris frowned slightly. He glanced at Xenophilius, then back at Luna. He had just settled in with the Lovegood family and was getting along well with the two of them. At this moment, he didn't want to go back to Shafik's old house alone, that would be too boring. Moreover, Aris still has some concerns in his heart. Now, he hasn't really started learning magic. If he returned to the old house to meet the members of the Barton family at this time, there would be no problem if all those people were as loyal as Henry. But what if some of them had ulterior motives and saw that he was just a child and had other ideas? Then he might as well stay at Luna's house, it would be safer. If you really want to go back to the old house, you need to at least wait until you have a certain level of self-protection ability. With his talent, this day won't last long. He has full confidence in himself. Master, do you have any concerns? Henry was a little surprised. He originally thought that Aris would be willing to officially return to the Shafik family as soon as possible so as to inherit everything from the family. But listening to Aris's answer at this time, it was obviously not the case. Seeing Henry's confusion, Aris thought for a moment and spoke again, maybe now is not the best time. You also said that there are still many people out there who are coveting the Shafik family's assets. Returning to the family with my current abilities will not help in this situation. On the contrary, it may encourage some people's covetousness. So, I need to make some preparations. Aris said it in a more tactful way and did not directly point out her concerns, but the effect was the same. Naturally, some people would be jealous when a child of his suddenly inherited such a huge fortune. Those families and people outside who are not friendly to the Shafik family will definitely come to test their strength and even do things that are detrimental to them. This is also a reasonable inference. Henry thought about it and frowned slightly. Apparently, he had thought of some of the tougher issues, and shared Aris's concerns. In that case, everything is up to you, young master. As long as you decide to officially return to the family, I will do everything in my power to protect you from any harm. Henry looked at Aris seriously, his tone firm and without any hesitation. Even if they are powerful pure-blood families, I will not let them take any advantage of you, young master. Listening to Henry's decisive words, Aris nodded slightly. Thank you for your hard work over the years. Aris's comforting words made Henry's eyes redden again. It can be seen that they really haven't had a good life in recent years. In fact, it is understandable that as the managers of the Shafik family's property, when all the direct members of the Shafik family have disappeared, they still have to maintain the huge wealth that makes everyone jealous, and they will definitely encounter many difficulties. It may be a common occurrence that people are coerced or bribed by families or individuals who attempt to seize the Shafik family's wealth. This is also the reason why Aris is worried. He must understand everything in advance and must not fight an unprepared battle. Okay, that's all for today. I'll contact you later. Aris stood up and said calmly, I still need to continue preparing things for after school, especially. I still need a wand. Although Aris has the talent for wandless casting, before he masters this talent, owning a magic wand will undoubtedly allow him to adapt to casting more quickly. Moreover, he also wanted to study the principles of wand making, and if there was a chance, he would even like to make a wand that best suits himself. Master, I can prepare these for you. Henry said quickly. No, this is my first time in Diagon Alley, and I want to walk around it by myself. Aris refused decisively. Just kidding, he doesn't want to be deprived of the shopping experience before freshmen enter school for no reason. Even his own loyal servants are not allowed to do so. Everything is up to you, young master, but I remember. Henry looked up and thought for a moment, as if recalling something, and then continued, we have also had a lot of cooperation with Ollivander's wand shop, and the Shafik family's collection seems to have a lot of precious wand materials. If you want, you can tailor a most suitable wand for yourself. That's possible. Aris' eyes lit up slightly. Anyone who has played the game knows the benefits of customizing a wand. Who doesn't want to have a powerful, cool-looking wand that suits them? Aris couldn't refuse this proposal. In that case, I'll arrange it right away. Henry's eyes lit up. It seemed that being able to serve Aris made him very happy. Then I'll go to Ollivander's wand shop first. I'll tell you what materials I need later. Aris walked downstairs to the bookstore. When he reached the door, he suddenly stopped. By the way, pack all the books in Flourish and Blot's bookstore and bring them to me later. All of them? Henry was stunned. Yes, all of them. Aris nodded affirmatively. This is a prop for him to gain points, so naturally the more the better. Of course, he also wanted to learn more knowledge from books so as to deal with more complicated situations in the future. Yes, I understand. Henry nodded respectfully. Well, then, let's go. Aris waved to Xianyo and the others. Master, please wait a moment. Henry showed a hint of hesitation on his face, but he gritted his teeth and called out to Aris. Forget about these two. Henry glanced at Xenophilius and Luna. They already knew your identity long ago, and they have a close relationship with you. But this little girl and the young master should not be familiar with each other, right? Henry's gaze finally fell on Hermione Granger. Since the young master does not want to reveal his identity too early, do you need to cast a forgetfulness spell on her? What? Hermione was confused and took a step back in panic. Having read many books on magic, she obviously knew what the spell of forgetfulness meant. Even though the spell might not cause her any substantial harm, she didn't want to be hit by a spell for no reason. Hearing Henry's words, Aris was stunned for a moment, then rubbed his temples, and under Miss Know-it-all's somewhat horrified gaze, he said helplessly, there's no need for this. Master, this is also for your safety. Henry still insisted. Aris had no choice but to look at Miss Know-it-all again and said with a smile, Miss Granger, you don't want to be cast into a forgetfulness spell, right? Chapter 23. Of course, who wants to be cast under that inexplicable spell? Facing Aris's question, Hermione Granger still looked a little nervous, and she spoke without hesitation. So. Aris still kept smiling. Can you please forget everything that happened today? No problem, I promise. Hermione nodded repeatedly, her tone firm. Aris turned around, looked at Henry again, and said, Look, Miss Granger has made a promise. Besides, she will be my classmate at Hogwarts in the future. I believe in her character, so don't mention the Oblivion spell anymore. That's it. Aris knew very well that ever since he left Gringotts, his identity could no longer be kept secret. Therefore, there was really no need to cast the Oblivion charm on Hermione now. The reason why he didn't want to return to Shafik's old house so early was not because he wanted to hide his identity, but because he still needed to make some preparations. By the way, remember to distribute the reward for Miss Granger completing the challenge. When walking out of the storage room, Aris suddenly turned around and reminded Henry. At this moment, several people's eyes involuntarily turned to the boy in front of them. For some reason, at this moment, a strange feeling suddenly arose in their hearts. This boy seems to handle things much more maturely than many adults. Every word and action of his makes people feel a little unpredictable. Hermione couldn't help but wonder, is this the power of the ancient wizard family bloodline? Besides, I didn't seem to have mentioned that I was going to Hogwarts to study, right? So how did Aris know? There is always a mysterious feeling. After today's events, Miss Granger came to a conclusion. From now on, you must not provoke this mysterious guy. Otherwise, there is a high possibility that a forgetfulness spell will be suddenly cast on you, and you will even forget who you are. Before they knew it, they had walked out of Bloomsbury bookstore. Miss Granger said goodbye to the others as she left the bookstore because she had other things to do. Crossing the street, Ollivander's wand shop appeared in Aris's sight ahead. The shop was small and shabby. A wand sat alone on the faded purple cushion in the window. The faded gold sign on the door read, Ollivander's, making fine wands since 382 BC. Perhaps, you will always remember this day, Aris. Xenophilius said with some emotion, because today, you will have your first magic wand. If it's custom made, you may not be able to get it today. Luna's voice suddenly came from the side. Aris smiled and nodded, I agree with what Luna said. How about we make a bet, Uncle Sienio? Sienio's face froze and he shook his head speechlessly. Forget it. He smiled bitterly and said, ordinary people don't have the opportunity to customize a magic wand. That would be a huge expense. When Luna goes to school, I will also customize a wand that is most suitable for her. Aris touched the girl's golden hair and said seriously. Luna turned her head, smiled, and suddenly felt warm in her heart. It's been too long. Ever since her mother passed away, it seemed that only her father cared about her. And now, it seems like there is one more person. Luna likes this feeling very much. It is a kind of happiness that spreads from the bottom of her heart. Come on, let's go in. Zeno was the first to walk into Ollivander's wand shop. Aris and the other two followed immediately. At this time, there was no one in the wand shop, and the huge shelves filled the entire store. On the shelves were long and thin boxes, which obviously contained ready-made wands covered with layers of dust, waiting for their owners to arrive. Is anyone there? Is Mr. Ollivander here? Sienio shouted inside, and then the sound of a slide moving was heard, followed by a slow and slightly mysterious voice coming from inside. Oh, who's coming? Hornbeam, unicorn hair, 14.5 inches, very talented and unique, and able to quickly adapt to the master's magic. Long time no see, Xenophilius. Long time no see, Mr. Ollivander. You're here today. Ollivander seemed a little puzzled. I remember you have a daughter, but she doesn't seem to be old enough to go to school yet. He looked back and saw Aris standing next to Luna. Oh, so you brought a little one with you. This is... Ollivander looked at Zeno with a probing look. My name is Aris Shafik. The boy took the initiative to speak and said his name. Shafik. After hearing the boy's words, Ollivander's expression changed obviously, and a look of surprise appeared. Could it be, that family? He muttered to himself and quickly walked down the slide. Yes, I heard some rumors before that the heir of that family appeared, and he was a little boy of only 11 years old. I should have thought of it earlier. Ollivander muttered to himself as he walked towards the huge shelf on the left. On the way, he took the time to ask, Child, are you more left-handed or right-handed? Right hand. Aris answered subconsciously. Of course, most people are like this. Ollivander was already standing in front of the shelf, running his fingers over each slender box. During this time, a tape measure on the table in the store automatically moved and began to measure Aris' size. Although Aris couldn't tell what role measuring his height and hand length played in choosing a wand. A moment later, Ollivander came to Aris with a box. Kid, I think you could try this wand. He opened the box, took out a wand and handed it to Aris. Ebony, the core is a few remaining White River monster spines, 14.2 inches, unique, firm in belief, using it to cast spells is powerful and elegant. Aris looked at the uniquely shaped black wand in front of him and was eager to try it out. Although he had already decided to customize his wand, it wouldn't be a bad idea to give it a try first. He took a breath and reached out to grip the handle of his wand. A strange feeling came from the wand, and Aris seemed to feel some kind of excitement. Then, he waved his hand gently, and a surge of magical power flowed towards the wand. In an instant, the entire wand shop was suddenly filled with a vibrant green color, and then all the wands in the shop began to tremble slightly. This scene stunned everyone present, including Ollivander. Miracle, this is simply a miracle. An excited voice came out of Ollivander's mouth. He looked at the trembling wands in the shop and the shelves that had begun to grow grass and branches due to the green, with undisguised shock in his eyes. This magical power is filled with immense vitality, and it actually caused many magic wands to resonate. Such powerful magic power cannot possibly appear in a little boy. Chapter 24. Ollivander looked at Aris sharply, then snatched the wand from his hand. No, although this wand is suitable for you, it obviously limits the use of your abilities. Let me think, what else can be worthy of your amazingly powerful talent? That's right. He moved quickly to a small shelf under the stairs, and then carefully took out a box from it. Maybe this one will suit you. Willow Wood, Phoenix Feather Core, 13.7 inches. The powerful vitality can maximize your potential. The Phoenix Feather is an extremely rare staff core and is very picky about its master, but I think you can definitely tame it. Aris once again grasped the wand that Ollivander handed over. Soon, that strange feeling appeared again. But it was obvious that something was different this time, very different. A feeling of loneliness and desolation suddenly surged into Aris' heart, and then magic power surged, and the whole store was once again plunged into a strange scene. However, this time, it is no longer full of vitality, but as lonely as death. The grey aura swept across all the shelves like a wave. The grass and branches that had grown due to Aris's release of vitality were quickly annihilated and turned into charred ashes in just a moment. This scene once again shocked several people in the store. How is this possible? Ollivander seemed to be on the verge of going crazy. He hugged his head and paced back and forth quickly on the spot. This power is like the power of death. Xianyo also opened his mouth in surprise. How could the power of life and death exist in one person? And Willow clearly represents vitality, why would it be? Ollivander's mumbling continued, and he seemed to be becoming more and more immersed. Aris, put down your wand. Luna's ethereal voice came from my ear. The voice made Aris' heart tremble slightly, and then he quickly put down the wand in his hand. He just realized that the power of death he released seemed to be about to run out of the store. This power of death seems to be much stronger than the previous power of vitality. At least, that's the effect after Aris released his magic this time. I see. Suddenly, Ollivander stopped abruptly, turned around and shouted, "It's a phoenix feather." It's true that phoenix feather is unruly and has extremely strong magical power, but its most important characteristic is the power of nirvana. The end of death is rebirth, and after rebirth, all things will wither again. This is the true meaning of the phoenix nirvana. Ordinary people simply cannot fully display this characteristic. And you, actually, were able to bring out the ultimate power of this magic wand so easily. It's incredible. Ollivander looked at Aris as if he were a monster. His brows were furrowed, and he seemed to be having an extremely intense ideological struggle in his mind. So now, what is the situation? It was Xianyo who felt something was wrong and asked. After a long moment, Ollivander sighed helplessly. I'm sorry, this gentleman's talent is too strong. Although I don't want to admit it, I think. He looked around, and it seemed that at that moment, he went through all the wands in the store in his mind. There may not be a wand here that is worthy of you. You are kidding. Zeno looked at Ollivander in a daze. There are so many wands here, but there is not one suitable for Aris. Alas. Ollivander sighed and nodded silently. It's not just here. Even if it's specially customized, the required materials may be extremely difficult to find. This child controls the power of life and death at the same time. This talent is so rare. The requirements for the magic wand must be extremely strict. He needs a wand wood that is full of vitality, and also a wand core with the power of death. More importantly, these two materials need to be strong and rare enough to support his terrifying magical talent without limiting his performance. And materials like this are usually extremely rare and extremely expensive. Hearing this, Aris frowned. He never thought that his powerful magical talent after merging with Merlin would actually be a hindrance sometimes. Just like now, it is not easy for him to find a wand that suits him. Who can I go to for justice on this matter? Mr. Ollivander, it seems that you have already met our young master. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the door of the store. Aris turned around and saw Henry walking in from outside with elegant steps. Behind him, 3 porters were carrying a huge box, trying to squeeze into the wand shop. Master, I have accomplished my mission. After entering the store, Henry first bowed respectfully to Aris, then pointed to the huge box behind him and said, I hope these wand materials can help you customize a wand for you. Henry, you brought the wand materials. Ollivander's eyes lit up when he saw Henry coming over carrying a large box. Yes. Then he smiled bitterly and shook his head. This guy is the young master of the Shafik family. There's no way he couldn't get any wand material he wanted. I have to say, Henry, your young master has given me so many surprises. You should have thought of it earlier. Henry showed pride on his face, and then looked at Aris with satisfaction. How could the descendants of Shafik be ordinary? Okay, let me see the materials you brought. After some business exaggeration, Ollivander walked towards the huge box impatiently. Aris also walked over with interest. Of course, there are Zeno and Luna. Phoenix feathers, nice and rare, but unfortunately I can't use them. Cherry, holly, and even elder. These are all very rare and very powerful, making them great materials for making wands. Unfortunately, it's still not enough. Ollivander opened box after box, and shook his head after looking through them, seeming a little disappointed. Don't worry, there are still these. Henry pointed to the corner of the box, where there were several boxes that were obviously blessed with protective spells and contained materials that looked very precious. He reached out and took out 2 of the boxes, and continued, just now I happened to hear that the young master seemed to control the power of life and death at the same time, so he needed a wand material that matched it, right? Yes. Ollivander nodded. Then I think these 2 materials will be very suitable. Henry drew his wand and cast a spell. Then, he quietly opened the 2 boxes he had taken out, revealing the wand materials inside. This is... The moment he saw the 2 materials, a light appeared in Ollivander's eyes. Chapter 25. What is this? Why does it look so weird? Luna asked as she curiously examined the materials in one of the boxes. This is a very special core, the thestral tail hair. Ollivander was obviously trying his best to suppress his excitement. He slowly introduced, it is a very strange magical creature. Only those who have witnessed death can see the full appearance of that creature. A magic wand made of the thestral tail hair possesses an extremely powerful force of death. Only a wizard who can control death can control a magic wand made of this core. As far as I know, there is only one wand whose core is made of the thestral tail hair, and the owner of that wand is named Albus Dumbledore. That's the headmaster of Hogwarts, the greatest white wizard in the contemporary wizarding world. Luna murmured thoughtfully. That's right. Only a truly powerful wizard can control a wand made of the thestral's tail hair, and he must be powerful enough to control death. Ollivander's eyes turned to the other box, and his voice became slightly trembling. And this is the wood for wands that only exists in legends, undead wood. Legend has it that this wood is taken from the trunk of the immortal tree in mythology. It has extremely strong vitality. Legend has it that if people eat it, they can live forever. You can imagine how precious it is. Aris was a little stunned and couldn't help but interjected, this should only be a myth, right? Of course. Ollivander nodded, then shook his head, but that's not entirely correct. This wood is indeed extremely rare and rarely appears in the world. It has magical power that ordinary people cannot imagine, and the vitality in it has reached a terrifying level. I can't think of any other material that is more suitable for your wand than undead wood. With the undead wood and the thestral tail hair, the power of life and death will be perfectly combined. Only a wizard who controls the power of life and death at the same time can perfectly control this magic wand. Master Shafik, your encounter with them must be destined, just like the cycle of fate. Hearing this, Aris glanced at Henry and a smile appeared on his face. This is not destiny. I think Henry must have spent a lot of effort to collect these materials. As long as I can help the young master, I am willing to do anything and will be happy to do it. Henry bowed to Aris, and the 2 goatees at the corners of his mouth unconsciously curled up slightly. Congratulations, Aris. Zeno turned his gaze away from the precious wand materials and said sincerely. Aris, you can finally have a tailor-made wand. Luna also smiled, and was obviously very happy for Aris. Okay, I have the materials. I will start making Master Shafik's wand right away. It will take about 3 days. Ollivander couldn't wait any longer, but he couldn't help but mutter, this must be a big project. But if it succeeds, the reputation of Ollivander's wand shop will surely resound throughout the wizarding world once again. Merlin's beard. This is the second wand in the world made from the thestral's tail hair. Even the legendary immortal wood was used. Ollivander quickly picked up the materials on the ground, then walked towards the workroom at the back of the shop muttering to himself. He didn't care that there was a group of people in the shop. He was truly a very ingenious wand maker. Okay, let's not disturb Mr. Ollivander anymore. Zeno looked at Aris and asked, where are we going next? Home. It seems that the supplies you will need for school have been purchased almost completely. Aris looked at Henry and raised an eyebrow. Henry responded immediately and handed over a bag the size of a backpack. Master, there are a total of 1,258 books in here, which is the number of all the books I can find now. After all, Flourish and Blott's bookstore sells popular books, and there aren't that many types. I've also added some of my family's collections, so it should be enough for you to read for a while. If you still need me, I can find more. It just takes a little more time. Aris took the bag and nodded in satisfaction. Thanks a lot. In such a short time, he found more than 1,000 books of different kinds and he was very satisfied. These books are enough for him to read for a while. Aris glanced at Ollivander's studio behind him, then said to Zeno, "It will take another 3 days to make the wand. I want to find a place to stay in Diagon Alley during these 3 days. Do you have any other plans? I'm afraid I have to go back to deal with the magazine's matters, so I can't accompany you." Xianyo said with some regret. "Then I'll stay." Little Luna suddenly spoke up. She held Aris' hand and said, "Aris is not very familiar with the magic world. During this time, I can tell him what I know." This. Xianyo was obviously hesitant. It was obvious that she was not at ease letting him leave 2 children in Diagon Alley and go back alone. At this time, several people had already walked out of Ollivander's wand shop. Henry was thoughtful enough to hang up a sign saying the store was temporarily closed and closed the door. "Please rest assured, Mr. Lovegood. I will take good care of the young master and Miss Luna here." Sensing Xianyo's hesitation, Henry spoke at the right time. He wished Aris could stay here so he could fulfill his duties as a servant. Especially after knowing that Aris possessed a rare and terrifying magical talent, he treated his young master like a treasure in his heart. "In that case, I naturally have nothing to worry about." Xianyo breathed a sigh of relief and felt a little more at ease. "In that case, I'll leave first." Zeno glanced at Aris and Luna, and finally reminded them, "Be sure to pay attention to safety. If anything happens, let the owl tell me immediately." "Got it, Uncle Xianyo," Aris said with a smile. Luna also nodded slightly. After the 3 of them said goodbye, Zeno turned around and disappeared into the street with a disapparition. "Now, Master, please follow me." Henry extended his hand and performed an elegant noble salute. "I will definitely arrange a satisfactory place for you and Miss Luna to live." "Excuse me, Uncle Henry." "Master, you should just call me Henry. I think Uncle Henry is pretty good. This old servant can't bear it." "I say yes." "All right." The 3 of them walked further and further away on the streets of Diagon Alley. The atmosphere was relaxed. What Aris didn't know was, just after they left, 2 figures appeared outside Ollivander's wand shop. "Aris Shafik." A voice with a hint of arrogance and gloom sounded. The man was wearing a dark green robe, had long, smooth golden hair, and held a cane in his hand. "Draco, remember this name, and make friends with him when you get to school." If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.